Tonight, before you close your eyes and let the final sounds of the day slowly fade into silence, try turning your thoughts toward the sky. We often see the stars shining and believe that they are what the universe wants us to see. But perhaps, behind that curtain of darkness, countless worlds exist that human eyes have never seen. Cold, solitary planets that emit no light, silently drifting through the infinite expanse. How many worlds are existing at this very moment that humanity knows absolutely nothing about? That is precisely what makes the universe feel both vast and strangely intimate at the same time. Carl Gustav Jung spent his entire life exploring the hidden depths within the human mind, places that cannot be seen with the eyes. He believed that beneath consciousness lie vast layers of the unconscious, where memories, symbols, and archetypes quietly shape our lives. And perhaps the universe holds a similar mystery. The part we can see may be only the surface. Behind the light of the stars, invisible planets may still exist, much like thoughts within the human mind that have never been given a name. On tonight's journey, we will explore wandering planets with no sun, worlds that may still preserve warmth in the darkness, and planets discovered not through human eyes, but through the mysterious traces they leave behind. We will travel into the most distant regions of the solar system, where an unconfirmed planet may be hiding in the darkness, and look toward the future, when technology may reveal worlds that have quietly existed for a very long time. You do not need to remember everything. You do not need to try to find every answer. Simply listen, and let these fascinating facts drift gently through your mind, like the distant light of a star. Perhaps, as your body gradually relaxes, you may realize that the greatest mystery is not what we have yet to discover in the universe, but the possibility that the world has always been larger than anything we are able to see. Welcome to Live Kindly. If you enjoyed gentle journeys exploring the universe, the human mind, and the profound mysteries of existence, please subscribe to the channel so that we can continue to meet again on quiet nights like this. And now, allow yourself to relax. Take one slow, gentle breath, because ahead of us lies a journey through 100 fascinating facts about planets hidden somewhere within the endless darkness of the universe. The universe may be filled with invisible worlds. There was once a time when human beings looked up at the night sky and believed that we were seeing almost everything that could possibly be seen. The twinkling stars, the familiar moon, a few planets moving slowly among the constellations. The sky seemed like a map that had already been drawn. Long before telescopes existed, people already knew of several planets that could be observed with the naked eye. They appeared as unusual points of light, not completely fixed like the distant stars, but quietly moving across the sky. For this reason, the ancients called them wanderers. For thousands of years, those worlds seemed to be the entire story humanity could tell about planets. But then, little by little, that understanding began to change. We discovered that Earth was not the center of everything. We realized that Earth was only one of many planets orbiting the Sunday. Then, we came to understand that the Sun itself was not a special star located at the center of the universe, but simply an ordinary star among hundreds of billions of stars in the Milky Way. And then, a larger question began to emerge. If the Sun has planets orbiting around it, could other stars also have worlds of their own? Today, the answer seems clearer than ever before. Astronomers have discovered thousands of planets beyond our solar system. These worlds are called exoplanets. Some planets are larger than Jupiter. Some are nearly as small as Earth. Some orbit so close to their stars that a year lasts only a few days. Others are frozen worlds, so distant that they receive only a tiny fraction of light and warmth. There are worlds that may be covered by scorching gases, worlds that may have oceans, worlds where glass may fall as rain, with violent winds and skies entirely unlike anything we have ever known. Every new discovery makes our picture of the universe a little larger, but perhaps the most thought-provoking thing does not lie in the number of planets we have already found. What is far more thought-provoking is the number of planets we have still not seen, because in science, not yet discovered does not mean does not exist. A candle hidden behind a wall continues to burn even when we cannot see its light. An island lying behind a curtain of mist is still there, even when a boat has not yet come close enough to recognize its shore. A sound beyond the range of human hearing still vibrates through the air. And perhaps the universe is the same. There may be worlds existing at this very moment, orbiting distant stars, drifting through the darkness between the stars, forming within enormous clouds of dust, yet never having appeared in any astronomical catalogue created by humanity. We often have a very natural habit, believing that the world we can see is the world that exists. But both science and psychology teach us that this is not entirely true. Carl Gustav Jung, who spent much of his life exploring the deepest regions of the human mind, understood very clearly the limits of what can be seen. He believed that the conscious part we recognize each day is only a small portion of our entire psychological life. Beneath the surface of the thoughts we can name lies a much larger world. Forgotten memories, repressed emotions, fears that have never been acknowledged, desires that have never been spoken aloud, and ancient symbols that seem to have accompanied humanity across generations. In a certain sense, the human mind is also like the night sky. We see a few points of light, but that does not mean that everything else is completely empty. Some things exist in darkness simply because they have not yet entered the light of consciousness. And when we look toward the universe, perhaps we are facing a similar situation. The planets we have discovered may represent only the portion of the universe that our current technology allows us to recognize. They do not necessarily represent everything that exists. They represent only what has, in one way or another, left a trace clear enough for humanity to detect. A planet may be too small. It may be too far away. It may be too cold. It may be too dark. It may be hidden by the light of its host star. It may orbit along a path that, from Earth's position, never allows us to see it pass in front of its star. Or perhaps, more simply, its signal may already have appeared in our data, but been too faint for us to recognize. This makes the story of planets fascinating in a very different way. We are not merely exploring distant worlds, we are exploring the limits of our own ability to explore. And perhaps that is one of the deepest experiences science can offer us. Every time humanity invents a new tool, the world seems to change. When the first telescopes were turned toward the sky, we saw craters on the moon, moons orbiting Jupiter, and countless stars that the naked eye could never recognize. When modern telescopes were placed beyond Earth's atmosphere, we were able to look deeper into space and farther into the past. When scientists developed methods sophisticated enough to measure incredibly tiny changes in the light of a star, planets that had once been completely invisible began to enter humanity's awareness. But every new tool also brings a humbling lesson, that before the tool existed, the things we could not see were still there. We simply had no way of recognizing them. Perhaps hundreds of years ago, if someone had said that there were worlds orbiting distant stars, most people could only have imagined them. No one could point to a place in the sky and say, "There is a planet there." Those worlds existed completely beyond the observational limits of their time, but they did not suddenly appear on the day we discovered them. They had existed before that, long before that. They orbited their stars while humanity had not yet invented the telescope. They completed their journeys around their suns. While ancient civilizations built cities, fought wars, loved one another, and told stories about gods in the sky, they continued to exist through the centuries when humanity believed that Earth was the center of the universe. And then, at some point, light data, and mathematics came together with enough precision for us to finally realize another world was there. That moment is truly astonishing, because a planet does not become more real when we discover it. Only our awareness becomes larger. Perhaps this is one of the most beautiful ideas to contemplate at night. That reality is always larger than the map we have drawn of it. As you lie in a quiet room and prepare to drift into sleep, you might imagine that somewhere in the Milky Way, a planet is orbiting a star that humanity has never named. Perhaps it has a deep blue sky. Perhaps it is completely covered by thick clouds. Perhaps its surface lies in almost eternal darkness. Perhaps it is a frozen world. Perhaps beneath its ice lies a deep ocean. Perhaps it is completely unlike any place we have ever known. And perhaps we will never discover it. Not because it does not exist, but because the distance between that world and us is simply too great. When we look at the universe, distance is always an important character in the story. Light needs time to travel. A star hundreds of light years away is not seen as it exists at this exact moment. We see the light it sent out long ago. If a planet orbits that star, detecting it becomes even more difficult. The planet itself usually does not emit powerful light. It may only reflect a small portion of the light from its host star. And within the enormous contrast between the brilliant light of a star and the faint darkness of a planet, seeing that planet may be like trying to find a speck of dust floating beside an enormous lamp from an unimaginably great distance. That is why, most of the time, astronomers do not actually see the planet. They see its traces. They observe a star suddenly becoming slightly dimmer. They notice the star moving or oscillating in a way that is difficult to explain. They detect a beam of light being bent. They find irregularities in movement. They observe the consequences and begin asking questions about the cause. This is also similar to the way Jung looked at the human mind. Many times, we do not look directly at the deeper cause of an emotion. We only see its effects. A recurring dream, an intense reaction to a situation that appears perfectly ordinary, a fear that we ourselves do not understand, a feeling of emptiness appearing at moments that seem impossible to explain. A pattern of behavior that returns again and again. Consciousness sees the phenomenon. The unconscious may be holding the story behind it. Of course, the universe is not the mind, and planets are not psychological symbols. But between these two journeys of exploration, there remains a poetic similarity. Human beings often begin by seeing the traces of something before we are able to understand its complete nature. There is an invisible movement, a very small influence, a gap in the data, something that does not fit, and then we begin to search. Perhaps this is why the question of hidden planets has such a special fascination, because it does not merely ask, what is out there? It also asks, what are we missing? Those are two entirely different questions. The first directs our eyes outward. The second forces us to look back at the limits of ourselves. We often take pride in what we have discovered. And truly, the achievements of modern astronomy are astonishing. We have found planets at distances that light takes hundreds or thousands of years to cross. We can analyze light and infer the composition of an atmosphere on another world. We can measure movements in a star so small that they are almost impossible to imagine, allowing us to discover a planet pulling on it through gravity. But at the same time, we must acknowledge one thing. Every method has its blind spots. One method may be extremely good at finding one type of planet while being almost incapable of detecting another. Large planets orbiting close to their stars often leave stronger traces. Small, cold, distant planets may remain almost completely silent. This creates a very natural bias in the catalogue of worlds we know. Not all planets have an equal chance of being discovered. And so, when we look at astronomical catalogues and see thousands of exoplanets, we should not imagine that we are seeing the entire planetary population of the Milky Way. We are only seeing what has managed to pass through many barriers: distance, light, geometry, technology, observation time, and our ability to analyze data. What lies beyond those barriers may still remain invisible. Perhaps a great many things. Try to imagine a vast city at night. You stand on a high hill and look down. You see brightly lit roads, prominent buildings, and crowded neighborhoods. But between those illuminated spaces are small streets without lights, rooms whose windows have gone dark, roads hidden behind large buildings, spaces obscured by fog. If you relied only on what your eyes could see, you might imagine that the city consisted only of points of light, but you know that this would not be true. The points of light are simply the easiest parts to notice. Perhaps planets in the universe are the same. The worlds we have discovered are like windows that are glowing, and behind the darkness, countless places may still exist that we have never seen. Carl Jung encouraged humanity to reconsider something very fundamental. We do not completely control our inner world as much as we may believe. Consciousness plays an important role, but it is not the entirety of who we are. Beneath the surface of everyday thought lies a vast ocean of forces, images, and tendencies that we do not always recognize. There is something closely related to that idea when we speak of invisible worlds in the universe. Perhaps we should not mistake the observed portion for the entirety of reality. We know a great deal, but knowing a great deal does not mean knowing everything. In fact, one of the signs of mature knowledge is the ability to recognize the gaps in one's own understanding. For Jung, psychological maturity was not simply about becoming more certain about everything. Sometimes, it meant learning to live with what is unknown, learning not to rush to fill every empty space with answers that are too simple, learning to listen to what remains unclear. And the universe invites us to do something similar. When we do not know whether a certain planet exists, science is not allowed to turn that lack of knowledge into a certain story. But that uncertainty does not make the universe any less fascinating. On the contrary, it makes the universe feel open. Somewhere, there may be a world we have never imagined. Somewhere, there may be a planet drifting alone through the darkness between the stars, belonging to no sun at all. Somewhere, there may be a planet orbiting a star so faint that we can barely distinguish it. Somewhere, there may be a world hidden behind a thick layer of dust, born within the darkness of the very place that created it. And perhaps, even within our own solar system, the distant regions are still holding secrets that we have not completely deciphered. That is what makes this story so suitable for the moments before sleep. During the day, we often live in a world of concrete things. Work needs to be completed. Calls need to be answered. Decisions need to be made. The mind constantly sorts everything into right and wrong, yes and no, should and should not. But when night falls, that rhythm begins to slow. Darkness appears not to take the world away from us, but to allow other things to enter our awareness. The stars become clearer, the sounds become softer, deeper thoughts have an opportunity to emerge. And perhaps, in the space between wakefulness and sleep, we can more easily sense a simple truth that is often forgotten during the day. Not everything needs to be seen immediately. Some things need time. Some things require a different point of view. Some things reveal themselves only when we stop trying to see them in the old way. A planet may remain hidden for billions of years simply because its light is too faint. The truth about ourselves may also remain hidden for many years simply because we are not yet ready to face it. This is not a scientific comparison, but an image for reflection. The outer universe and the inner world both remind us that invisibility does not mean emptiness. Darkness does not always mean that there is nothing there. Sometimes, darkness simply means that we do not yet have enough light. Think of a distant planet. It may exist in a region where the light from its star is very faint. Its surface may be so cold that substances familiar to us become solid. There may be no blue oceans, no sky like Earth's, and no signs that we are able to recognize from this distance. But it is still a world. It has its own history. Perhaps it formed from a disk of dust and gas billions of years ago. Perhaps it endured catastrophic collisions during its early existence. Perhaps its surface has changed over millions of years. Perhaps heat still remains deep inside it. Perhaps small moons orbit around it. Perhaps its storms began long before humanity ever appeared. A world can have an entire story without a single human being ever knowing it. And there is something truly beautiful about that thought. It reminds us that the universe does not exist simply to wait for us to discover it. Planets do not need to be named by human beings in order to exist. Stars do not need to be observed in order to shine. Galaxies do not need to be recorded in books in order to continue moving. Human beings are only a small part of a reality that existed long before we appeared and may continue for a very long time after we are gone. Sometimes, that realization can make us feel small, but in another way, it can also bring a sense of peace. Because if the universe is truly that vast, perhaps not every problem of today needs to be solved immediately. Some things can wait until tomorrow. Some questions do not need an answer tonight. Some mysteries are most beautiful when they remain mysteries. Perhaps that is also the spirit best suited to this journey. We will not try to turn everything unknown into a certain answer. We will move slowly. We will observe. We will listen to what science has discovered, while also respecting the spaces that science is still trying to fill. Because it is within those spaces that curiosity is born. And curiosity is one of the most beautiful forces within human beings. A child looks up at the sky and asks, "What is out there?" An astronomer looks at the data and asks, "Why is this star moving this way?" A mathematician notices a deviation and asks, "Is something invisible affecting this?" A psychologist sees a dream and asks, "What is this image trying to say?" These questions begin with the same acknowledgement, that perhaps there is still something we have not yet seen, and sometimes that is where a great discovery begins. Let us return to a simple question that is almost impossible to answer completely. How many planets exist in the universe that humanity has never seen? We do not know. Perhaps none of us alive today will ever know the final answer. The number of stars in the observable universe has already surpassed the limits of ordinary imagination. Our Milky Way is only one galaxy among countless others, and if planets are a common part of the process of star formation, then the possibility of undiscovered worlds becomes an idea that is both scientific and overwhelming. But the final number is not the only thing that matters. Perhaps what matters more is the realization that what we know is only a part of what may exist. When that realization appears, the way we look at the universe changes. The night sky is no longer simply a black background filled with points of light. Every star becomes a possibility. A planetary system may exist there. Unnamed worlds may be orbiting that light. There may be planets that our current telescopes are not yet powerful enough to detect. There may be worlds that we will discover only decades from now. There may be planets that will be recognized only when an entirely new technology appears. And there may also be worlds that will forever remain beyond the reach of humanity. Not because they are not real, but because the universe is simply too vast. It is a thought that is both sad and beautiful. But perhaps we do not need to possess every secret in order to feel its beauty. You do not need to know the name of every star in order to feel peaceful when looking up at the sky. You do not need to set foot on a planet to know that it may exist. And you do not need to understand everything about yourself immediately. Sometimes, simply knowing that beyond what we can see there is a larger space is enough to change the way we think. Carl Jung once directed humanity's attention toward the unconscious depths, not to make us afraid of the darkness within the mind, but to help us understand that an important part of life takes place beyond the direct control of consciousness. There are things within us that appear only through dreams. There are things that reveal themselves only in moments of silence. There are things that become less clear the more desperately we try to grasp them. The universe has secrets like this as well. A planet may not appear when we look directly at it, but it may cause its host star to dim. It may cause the star to wobble. It may bend light. It may influence other objects. And from those tiny traces, humanity slowly learns to say, perhaps there is a world there. The word perhaps is sometimes the first doorway to knowledge, not a certainty, but an invitation to continue observing. And so, on tonight's journey, we will enter the world of things that have not yet fully revealed themselves. We will encounter wandering planets with no Sunday, solitary worlds drifting through the space between the stars. We will ask whether a planet that receives no light from a star might still retain heat and perhaps even create conditions suitable for life. We will explore how scientists discover planets they cannot see directly. We will enter a world of extremely faint signals, subtle oscillations, gravitational lensing, and equations that can point the way toward a world that has never been directly observed. We will also confront the blind spots of technology, because one of the most important things modern astronomy teaches us is this: observational instruments do not merely expand our vision, they also shape what we are capable of seeing. A different telescope may tell us a different story. A new algorithm may find a signal that older data overlooked. A new generation of instruments may transform a world that was once invisible into an ordinary discovery. And in a very distant region of our solar system, we will encounter another question that still has no certain answer. Could there be a large planet hiding in the darkness beyond the orbit of Neptune? We will not rush to believe, but we will observe why that question has been asked. Because sometimes, a mystery does not need to be solved immediately in order to be worth exploring. It only needs to be deep enough to make us reconsider what we thought we already knew. And perhaps that is also the greatest gift of stories about the universe. They make us slow down. In a world where everything urges us to have an answer, the universe reminds us that some questions need time. In a world where we often believe that only what can be measured is important, the universe shows us that many important things may exist before we have the ability to measure them. In a world where human beings can easily assume that we already understand so much, the night sky only needs to open before us to remind us of the vastness of the unknown. Perhaps that is why, before drifting into sleep, there is no image more fitting than that of an undiscovered planet, a world that is simply there, in silence. No one has named it, no one has seen it. No map marks its exact location, yet it continues to orbit, it continues to drift, it continues to exist, and perhaps, somewhere in the universe, planets like this may outnumber all the planets we have already discovered, combined. We cannot be certain, but the possibility alone is enough to make the night sky appear different. The next time you look up at a dark region between the stars, try to remember that darkness does not necessarily mean emptiness. There may be worlds there. Perhaps they are too small to recognize, too cold to shine, too distant for our current technology to reach. Or perhaps they are simply waiting for an entirely new method to be found. Just as in the human mind, sometimes what has not yet been brought into awareness has not disappeared. It simply lies beyond the region of light we are currently using. And perhaps this is where our journey truly begins. Not with an answer, but with a darkness filled with possibilities, a darkness that may contain planets that have never been named, oceans that have never been seen, skies that no one has ever observed, worlds that have existed for billions of years without humanity ever knowing they were there. And as we move deeper into this story, perhaps we will realize that what makes the universe astonishing is not only what it has revealed, but also everything it still keeps hidden. Tonight, you do not need to try to remember every fact. You do not need to imagine every distance precisely. You do not need to solve the question of how many planets are hidden in the darkness. Simply allow your mind to drift gently, with the thought that out there, countless worlds may exist that we have never seen. And who knows? Perhaps while we are slowly falling asleep, a telescope somewhere on Earth is still pointed toward the sky. A computer is analyzing long streams of data. A scientist may be noticing an incredibly small movement, a signal so faint that it seems almost insignificant. And then, perhaps one day, that signal will become the first evidence of an entirely new world, a planet that existed in darkness for billions of years, but has only just entered the light of human awareness. And that will not be the end of the mystery. Perhaps it will simply be another reminder that behind every discovery, there is always a larger space waiting to be explored. So, let this question remain with you for a few more moments. How many planets exist in the universe that humanity has never seen? Perhaps we do not yet know. Perhaps it will take many more generations to find out. But perhaps the beauty of the question does not lie in whether one day we will be able to count every world. Its beauty lies in the fact that every time we think we have seen enough, the universe gently opens another door. And behind that door, another world may be waiting. A world without a name, a world without an observer, a world completely unfamiliar, yet still there, in the darkness, in the silence, among countless stars, waiting, not for human beings to discover it, but simply continuing to exist in its own way. And perhaps that is the most fitting thought with which to begin this journey. Because behind what we can see, there may always be something else. Behind the light, there is darkness. Behind the darkness, there may be a world. And behind that world, there may be another mystery, greater than anything we have ever imagined. Now, allow yourself to relax a little. Let your breathing become slower. Let the thoughts of today gently move into the background, because before us lies a journey through worlds that cannot always be seen. Solitary planets, invisible signals, the dark spaces between the stars, and secrets that are quietly waiting to be recognized. We will begin with one of the strangest and loneliest ideas astronomy has ever presented: a planet without a Sunday, a world that does not orbit any star, a wandering planet, drifting alone through the almost endless darkness of space. And the first question of this journey is, what happens when a world is separated from the light of a star? Let us continue deeper, into the planets hidden within the darkness of the universe. Rogue planets, worlds without a sun. Try to imagine a world without morning. No moment when the light of dawn slowly spreads across the horizon. No sunset. No familiar star hanging in the sky to mark the passage between day and night. Only a solitary planet, quietly drifting through the vast space between the stars, carrying with it its own rocks, ice, atmosphere, and history. It is one of the strangest possibilities in the universe. Rogue planets, wandering worlds that are not bound to any Sunday. When we think of a planet, the mind naturally tends to imagine a familiar system. There is a star at the center. Around it, planets move along stable orbits. Everything seems to have an order. There is a center of gravity. There is a rhythm. There is somewhere to belong. Our solar system has made this image seem so obvious that we sometimes forget that the universe has no obligation to arrange everything in a way that feels familiar to human beings. A planet does not necessarily need a star. A world can lose its Sunday, or perhaps from the very beginning, it never truly belonged to any sun at all. Rogue planets are a reminder that the universe may contain lives entirely different from what we usually imagine. They do not orbit a star to receive its light. There is no year measured by a journey around a Sunday. There is no familiar frame of reference that tells us this is the center and that is the edge. They drift between the stars, sometimes across distances so vast that light may need years, centuries, or even longer to cross them. And the strange thing is that such a planet may once have had a home. Let us return to the time when a planetary system was still very young. When a new star forms, It is often surrounded by a disk of material made of gas and dust. Over time, particles collide, gather together, and gradually grow. Small structures become larger celestial bodies. Gravity begins to create order, but that order does not necessarily appear from the beginning. Young planetary systems can be extraordinarily chaotic places. Objects pull on one another. Orbits change. Collisions occur. Giant planets can disrupt the movements of smaller worlds. Sometimes, a planet receives enough gravitational energy to exceed the escape velocity of its star system, and then it leaves. Not through a farewell with words. There is no sound. No one is watching. There is simply a change in its orbit. A stronger gravitational force than expected. A chain of interactions unfolding over millions of years. And at some point, that planet no longer returns. It becomes a wanderer. There is something very profound in that image. A world may once have orbited a star, once followed a stable rhythm, once belonged to a larger system, but after an event in its gravitational history, everything changes. It is pushed outward, enters the space between the stars, and continues to exist without the familiar light that once shaped its life. Of course, a planet does not have emotions like human beings. It does not know loneliness. It does not remember an old Sunday. Yet this scientific image can still touch our imagination, because human beings understand very well what it feels like to leave behind things that were once familiar. Carl Gustav Jung was deeply interested in the human journey of leaving familiar structures behind in order to confront the inner world within oneself. In analytical psychology, human beings do not always grow by remaining within what is familiar. Sometimes, development begins when old structures are no longer strong enough to hold us in place. But unlike a planet pushed out of its orbit by gravitational forces, human beings still possess the ability to become aware, to choose, and to search for meaning in their own journey. Perhaps that is why the image of a rogue planet can inspire so many reflections. A world without a sun may seem like a world that has lost everything. But is that really so? A planet ejected from its star system does not disappear. It still carries its mass. It still has its structure. It remains subject to the laws of physics. Deep inside, heat from its formation may still remain. It may continue traveling through the galaxy for a period almost impossible to imagine. It no longer belongs to its former system, but that does not mean it has ceased to exist. This is a gentle thought to carry with you as night falls. Not everything that leaves its old orbit disappears. Not every separation is an ending. Not every darkness means emptiness. Some rogue planets may begin their stories in a different way. Instead of forming around a star and later being pushed outward, some objects with planetary masses may form directly through the collapse of clouds of gas and dust. This makes the boundaries between familiar concepts more complicated than we sometimes imagine. The universe rarely fits perfectly into the neat boxes human beings wish to create. We want to know, is this a star? Is this a planet? How was it born? Where does it belong? But nature itself does not necessarily care about our categories. It simply operates according to physical conditions: gravity, mass, temperature, pressure, and time. The names we create help us understand the world. But sometimes they also make us forget that reality can always be more complex than our definitions. Perhaps this is also very close to the way Jung viewed human beings. We often want to define ourselves through simple labels: strong or weak, successful or unsuccessful, introverted or extroverted, belonging or feeling lost. But the human psyche is not a map painted in only two colors. Beneath those concepts lie deeper layers, contradictions, possibilities that have not yet been developed, and parts of ourselves that we have never encountered. A rogue planet also breaks apart a simple label. A planet, we once thought, was something that orbited a star. But then the universe showed us that there are worlds that do not do that. And they are still there. They are still a part of the galaxy. Imagine the Milky Way on an imagined night. Its vast spiral arms are filled with stars. Between them lie dark spaces. From far away, we can see the light of billions of stars. But whatever does not emit light is always more difficult to recognize. A rogue planet may move through those dark regions while remaining almost completely invisible. There is no light from a host star for it to reflect. There is no regular orbit around a familiar star for astronomers to follow easily. There is no astronomical light bulb nearby to make it stand out clearly. If it is cold, dark, and alone, it may become one of the most difficult objects to detect. And this is where the story becomes especially intriguing. The space between the stars may not be as empty as we once imagined. We often picture the distances between star systems as regions of absolute emptiness. But the universe does not consist only of objects that we can easily see. Between the stars there is gas, dust, radiation, energetic particles, and perhaps worlds without stars of their own. Rogue planets may be moving through the galaxy at this very moment. Perhaps some are extremely far away. Perhaps some are closer than we think. Perhaps light from a distant star has already passed across some of them, and no one noticed. Perhaps data from a brief gravitational event has appeared and then disappeared. Because when it comes to dark planets, human beings often cannot simply point a telescope in their direction and take a photograph. We must wait for them to leave a trace. And that makes the search a lesson in patience. Sometimes, in order to find something invisible, we do not look directly at it. We observe how it affects other things. A dark object can bend light. A planet can create a change in movement. A mass can reveal its existence through gravity. A world that speaks no words can still leave traces behind. In the depths of Jung's psychology, there is a similar idea in a symbolic sense. Unconscious contents do not always appear directly. They may reveal themselves through dreams, symbols, reactions, repetition, and moments that consciousness cannot immediately explain. We do not see the unconscious in the way we see an object resting on a table. We recognize it through the ways in which it acts and influences us. Perhaps that is why rogue planets fit so strangely well into a journey of reflection before sleep. When night falls, the outer world becomes less distinct. Familiar outlines sink into darkness. The room is still there, but we no longer see everything with the same clarity we had during the day. And within this reduction of light, the imagination begins to work in a different way. You can lie still and imagine a solitary planet moving through the galaxy. No cities, no voices, no sunrise, only space. But that silence does not mean absolute death. Inside the planet, matter still exists. Atoms still move. Gravity still holds that world together. If a source of heat remains within it, geological processes may continue for some time. A planet without a sun may appear to have been excluded from every story, yet it still possesses a history of its own. And perhaps this is one of the most moving ideas in astronomy. Existence does not need an audience. A world can exist without anyone knowing about it. A planet can complete a long journey through the galaxy without ever being given a name. A star can shine for billions of years before its light reaches a place where a civilization capable of observing it exists. The universe does not need to be witnessed by human beings in order to be real. There is a great humility in that realization. We are not the center of the story. We are simply observers who arrived very late. And the wonderful thing is that, despite arriving late, we still have the ability to ask questions. How many rogue planets are there in the Milky Way? Where do they come from? How long can they survive? Could there be oceans beneath their layers of ice? Could moons still orbit a planet that has lost its host star? Could there be worlds that once resembled Earth before being pushed into darkness? We do not yet have complete answers. But every question opens a new space for imagination. Perhaps in the future, more sensitive telescopes and large-scale observational programs will help us better understand the true number of these worlds. Perhaps they are more common than we once thought. Perhaps they are fewer. Science is still continuing to gather evidence. But even without a final number, the possibility of these worlds alone is enough to change the way we imagine our galaxy. The Milky Way does not contain only brightly shining star systems. It may also contain planets without suns, worlds that never appear in the sky of any civilization, dark spheres moving through vast expanses of space. And if one day we discover such a planet, perhaps we will recognize it only during a brief moment, through the trace created by its gravity, a small event, a fleeting signal, a change in light. Then it will continue its journey, perhaps never to return. This also makes us think about time. In human life, we often consider a year to be long, a decade to be very long, and an entire human lifetime to be a world in itself. But in the universe, a planet may drift through the galaxy over periods that lie far beyond our ability to experience directly. It may begin its journey while a star system is still young. It may pass through different regions of the galaxy. It may witness, in a physical sense, changing environments of space around it. And throughout that immense period of time, Earth may experience geological eras, climatic transformations, and the appearance and disappearance of countless species. A rogue planet does not know time, but time passes through it. That image feels especially fitting for the final moments of the day, because sometimes we also need to be reminded that we do not have to move as quickly as the world demands. The universe has very different rhythms. There are movements so slow that human beings cannot perceive them. There are changes that begin today but reveal themselves only many years later. Jung was interested in the process through which human beings gradually become themselves. It is not an event that happens in a single night. It is a long journey, sometimes chaotic, sometimes lonely, sometimes making us feel as though we are leaving behind our old orbits. But leaving a familiar structure does not automatically mean losing one's direction forever. A person can discover a new way of existing, a new center, a new meaning. Of course, we should not turn a rogue planet into a simple metaphor for human life. Science has its own story to tell, but images from the universe have always possessed a special power over the human mind. They give us enough distance to look back at the things that are close to us. And perhaps, when we think about a world drifting through darkness, we can also think about those periods in life when we do not know where we are going. Periods when the future is unclear, moments when a familiar path comes to an end, times when we no longer feel that we belong where we once did. Those moments may not be comfortable, but they do not necessarily mean that everything has ended. A world is still a world, even when it no longer orbits a Sunday, and a human being remains themselves, even while going through changes that make everything familiar seem to disappear. Perhaps that is the gentlest thought that rogue planets can offer us. Not a romanticization of loneliness, not a claim that every separation is somehow beautiful, but a simple reminder. Existence does not always mean being anchored to something familiar. The universe is larger than the models we have known, and the inner life of a human being is also larger than the definitions we have once placed upon ourselves. Somewhere in the darkness between the stars, perhaps a planet is drifting. It has no sun to call its center. No one on Earth is following its journey. No voice is calling its name. Yet it still carries its entire physical story with it. A past, an origin, a structure, a journey. And perhaps that is what makes these wandering worlds so mysterious. They force us to look into empty space and acknowledge that darkness may contain more than we imagine. The space between the stars may not be empty. Between brilliant lights, there may exist worlds that do not shine. Between orderly systems, there may be journeys without familiar orbits. And among everything we have already discovered, there may still be countless things quietly drifting beyond the reach of our eyes. So, as you prepare to sink more deeply into sleep, try to hold on to one image, a vast expanse of space, distant, silent, stars scattered far apart, and between them, almost impossible to see, a planet is drifting. No sunrise, no sunset, no sun, but still a world, still existing, still moving, still carrying within itself secrets that perhaps we have never even imagined. And the most fascinating thing is that such a world does not necessarily have to be completely frozen and motionless. Perhaps even after moving far away from the light of a star, a planet can still retain warmth deep within itself. Perhaps beneath a thick layer of ice, water can still exist in liquid form. Perhaps energy from deep inside the planet can continue driving processes that we have never seen. And if that is possible, an even deeper question begins to emerge. Could a world without a sun still be a place where life finds a way to exist? That will be the next door we open. A door leading deeper into the darkness, and perhaps deeper into one of the most astonishing truths of the universe, that life, if it is truly widespread, may have learned how to survive in places we once believed were completely impossible. So, continue listening, because the journey of rogue planets has only just begun. And within the darkness we once called empty, entire worlds may exist. Solitary worlds, invisible worlds, worlds without a Sunday, yet still quietly drifting through the universe, within the vast silence of time. Could a world without a sun still harbor life? When we think about life, we often think immediately of light. A sunny morning, green fields, the sea reflecting the sky, plants turning toward the Sunday. Throughout human experience, light seems inseparably connected to life. Our Earth is warmed by the Sunday. Plants use sunlight for photosynthesis. The food chains on the surface of our planet depend, directly or indirectly, on that source of energy. So when we imagine a planet that has left its star system and drifted into the freezing darkness between the stars, our first reaction is natural. Surely, that must be a dead world. No sun, no sunrise, no seasons shaped by the familiar changing patterns of light, no vast source of warmth shining down upon its surface. So what could possibly remain? But the universe often becomes most fascinating at the very moment we realize that our familiar assumptions may not represent the whole answer. The absence of a sun does not necessarily mean that a planet immediately becomes a completely frozen and lifeless sphere. A world may lose its external source of light, while still retaining some heat deep within itself. And here, the story of rogue planets begins to shift from one of loneliness to something even stranger. Perhaps, even in the deepest darkness between the stars, a world could still maintain conditions suitable for life. This is not a claim that we have discovered life on a rogue planet. We have no evidence of that. But science allows us to ask questions based on the physical laws we already understand. If a planet possesses an internal source of energy, if it has sufficient insulation, and if water or another suitable liquid medium can remain in liquid form somewhere within its environment, could life find a way to survive? That question leads us toward a profound possibility. Perhaps life does not have only one kind of environment that it can call home. A newly formed planet does not begin completely cold. As matter gathers under the influence of gravity, energy is released. Collisions during the planet's early history also generate heat. Radioactive elements inside the planet continue to decay and release energy. Gravity can create enormous pressure in deeper layers. Geological activity, the movement of material, and in some cases volcanic processes can transport internal energy closer to the surface. In a sense, a planet can carry the thermal history of its own creation. Even after it no longer receives light from a star, its interior may not have completely cooled. This forces us to look differently at a dark world. Its surface may freeze, but the surface is not the entire planet. That is a simple truth. Yet it opens an enormous range of possibilities. Because we live on Earth's surface, we naturally tend to think of the surface as the place where everything important happens. We look at the sky, the oceans, and the land beneath our feet. We experience the world through the thin outer layer of our planet. But beneath our feet lie layers of hot material, slow movements of rock and metal, and sources of energy that are still active. A distant world may be the same. Imagine a rogue planet drifting through darkness. From the outside, it might appear to be a frozen, silent sphere. There is no sunlight to reflect, no familiar blue colors. From a great distance, it might almost disappear completely into the black background of space. But if we could travel through its layer of ice, what might we find beneath? Perhaps rock, perhaps minerals compressed beneath enormous pressure, perhaps regions of hot material, and under certain suitable conditions, perhaps liquid water, an ocean beneath the ice. The idea may sound like science fiction, yet our own solar system has already given scientists examples that make the possibility of subsurface oceans worthy of serious investigation. These examples teach us something important. Liquid water does not necessarily need to exist only on a surface warmed by the sunday. If there is an internal source of heat and a sufficiently thick layer of ice to help preserve that heat, an ocean may be able to exist beneath a cold and frozen shell. And pause for a moment to feel the beauty of that image. A world completely dark on the outside, a frozen surface, no sunrise, no light. Yet deep beneath the ice, perhaps an ocean exists. An ocean no one has ever seen. No waves reflecting moonlight. No sky above. No horizon in the way we understand it. Only water, darkness, and energy coming from the very heart of the planet. There is something almost symbolic about this image, and it fits beautifully with the way we can reflect on the human mind through the perspective of Carl Gustav Jung. Jung spent much of his life exploring what lies beneath the surface of consciousness. We usually know most clearly the thoughts currently passing through our minds, but human beings are not made only of what they can immediately explain. Beneath conscious awareness are deeper layers, memories, emotions, images, and impulses that are not always illuminated by direct recognition. That does not mean these unseen parts do not exist. On the contrary, they may continue moving and influencing our lives. A planet with a frozen surface and a deep ocean beneath can become a gentle image for this idea. Sometimes, what appears silent from the outside contains an entire world still moving within. A person may appear calm, yet inside there may be an entire ocean, a memory that seems to have gone cold, an emotion that has never been given a name, a possibility still waiting to be discovered. Jung once wrote, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." This does not mean that everything unconscious is some dark force secretly controlling us. It suggests something deeper. What we do not see can still influence us. When something exists outside our awareness, we may experience its consequences without understanding where they come from. In astronomy, we often discover invisible objects through their effects. In depth psychology, we may sometimes recognize unconscious material through dreams, recurring patterns, or powerful reactions that are difficult to explain. And on a rogue planet, we may not be able to see what is happening beneath the ice, yet we can still ask whether internal sources of energy might be sustaining an environment completely different from what the surface suggests. This is not an attempt to use psychology to explain astronomy. These are two different fields. But the images offered by the universe can sometimes help us think more deeply about ourselves, because they remind us that the surface does not always tell the entire story. One of the most intriguing possibilities for a rogue planet involves its atmosphere. If a world possessed a very thick atmosphere, especially one containing large amounts of hydrogen, that atmosphere could potentially act like an enormous blanket, helping to retain some of the planet's heat. Heat retention depends on many complex factors, including atmospheric composition, pressure, planetary mass, and internal sources of energy. But in principle, a sufficiently thick atmosphere can significantly change the way a planet loses heat to space. And so, a world without sunlight does not necessarily cool as quickly as we might imagine. It may carry warmth, retain warmth, protect an inner region from the extreme cold of space. This makes the question of life even more interesting. On Earth, we naturally tend to understand life through the conditions in which we live. We have sunlight. We have liquid water on the surface. We have an atmosphere with familiar ingredients. We live within a range of temperatures especially suitable for the biology we know, but the universe has no obligation to reproduce Earth. If life exists elsewhere, it may use different sources of energy. Even here on Earth, life exists in places where sunlight cannot reach. In the deep ocean, where light is nearly absent, some ecosystems can depend on chemical energy rather than photosynthesis. This reveals an important principle. Sunlight is essential for much of the life on Earth's surface. But not every living process we know depends directly on sunlight. So, if a rogue planet possessed a hidden ocean, an internal source of heat, and chemical reactions capable of providing energy, could some form of life survive? We do not know. But the question is certainly worth asking. And sometimes, the greatest transformation in science does not begin with an answer. It begins when a question that once seemed impossible suddenly becomes a reasonable one. There was once a time when humans believed planets beyond our solar system might be too distant to detect. Today, we know of thousands of exoplanets. There was once a time when we viewed a sunlit surface as the central image of a potentially habitable world. Today, scientists also seriously study the possibility of oceans hidden deep beneath the icy surfaces of other celestial bodies. Human understanding changes whenever evidence expands. Perhaps one day, we will look back at some of our current assumptions and realize that we were once too narrow in the way we defined a habitable environment. This brings us to a thought that fits beautifully with Jung. Reality is often larger than the image our present consciousness has of it. Human beings create maps to understand the world, but the map is not the territory. A concept is not the entirety of reality. Everything we currently know about life is based primarily on a single example that we can study directly: Earth. That is an extraordinarily valuable foundation, but it is also a limitation. We do not know how widespread life may be. We do not know how many different environments it might survive in. We do not know whether a dark ocean beneath the ice of a wandering world could become the birthplace of some form of biology. And because we do not know, we must remain careful. But caution does not mean we should stop imagining. Good science requires both. Imagination allows us to ask questions. Evidence allows us to test the answers. Perhaps that is how we should listen to this story tonight. Not as a declaration that life certainly exists in the darkness, but as an invitation to expand the imagination. Imagine an ocean without a sky. Above it lie kilometers of ice. Below it, water. Deeper still, hot rock and geological sources of energy. Not a single ray of sunlight has ever touched that place. If some form of creature existed in such an environment, it might never know what dawn is. The idea of a sunrise could be completely meaningless. The sky would not be part of its experience. Its world would be defined by pressure, currents, chemistry, and temperature. And if it existed, its entire history might unfold within a dark ocean, while no other civilization anywhere in the universe ever knew it was there. This is a thought that can make the imagination grow very quiet, because it reminds us that a world does not necessarily have to resemble our own. A world does not need forests. It does not need birds. It does not need sunny days. It does not need sunsets. It simply needs conditions suitable for whatever exists within it. Perhaps life is like the human mind. It always finds paths more complex than the simple definitions we try to impose upon it. In the process of personal development that Jung called individuation, a person gradually encounters the parts of themselves that have not yet been fully recognized. That journey does not always take place in clear light. Often, we understand something about ourselves only after a long period of uncertainty. There are times when life feels like entering a dark region, where we cannot immediately see the path ahead. But darkness does not necessarily contain only loss. Sometimes, it is also the place where something new is being formed. A seed develops beneath the soil. A child begins life in the darkness of the womb. A dream appears when consciousness temporarily steps aside. An ocean may lie hidden beneath a layer of ice, and a planet that appears to be dead may still retain heat. These are different images from different fields, yet they all remind us of one thing. What has not been seen is not necessarily something that does not exist. Perhaps this is why rogue planets offer us a lesson in humility. We look at a dark world and say, perhaps there is nothing there. But the universe asks, how much have you actually seen? We look at a layer of ice and assume that beneath it there is only cold. But science asks, do you know that for certain? We see the absence of a sun and conclude that life cannot exist. Yet nature on Earth itself has demonstrated that life can survive in environments without direct sunlight. Every time we expand our understanding, a part of the universe changes shape within the mind. Perhaps this is what makes science feel, in some ways, close to a spiritual experience, not because science provides mystical answers, but because it continually forces us to abandon excessive certainty. We must learn to say, I do not know, but I want to find out. And in a way, those words are perfectly suited to sleep. As we prepare to sleep, we cannot control everything. We cannot hold tomorrow entirely in our hands. We must accept entering a period in which consciousness gradually changes. Sleep is a gentle surrender to something we cannot completely control. Perhaps that is why imagining a world hidden beneath ice can bring a sense of peace. There, everything happens slowly. There is no noise from the city, no work schedule, no clock, only processes unfolding across immense periods of time. A small source of heat, a layer of ice preserving energy, a dark ocean, chemical reactions, a planet drifting through the space between the stars. And if life exists there, perhaps it has learned to live without ever knowing light. Perhaps that is the most astonishing idea of all. We often assume that life needs an external center in order to survive. A sun, a source of light, a fire in the sky. But a planet may remind us that energy can also come from within. Light does not always have to come from above. Warmth does not always have to be given from the outside. This is not a scientific conclusion about psychology. It is simply an image for reflection, but it possesses a beauty of its own. A world may appear frozen from a distance while still preserving warmth inside. A human being may appear silent while carrying an entire universe of emotion. A night may be dark while still becoming the place where dreams begin. Perhaps Jung would remind us that the important task is not to eliminate darkness, but to learn to recognize that darkness is also part of the whole. In depth psychology, maturity does not mean keeping only the bright and pleasant parts of ourselves. It also means learning to see what was once hidden. The universe seems to teach us something similar. Not every world is illuminated, but that does not mean it is not worth searching for. Not every place capable of sustaining life resembles Earth, but that does not mean we should stop asking questions. Perhaps somewhere out there, a planet exists without a Sunday. Its surface is covered in ice. Not a single ray of light has touched it for millions of years. Yet deep below, water may still be moving. Minerals may still be interacting. Heat may still be rising from the heart of the planet. And in that complete darkness, perhaps chemistry is telling a story we have never heard. We do not know whether that story leads to life, but the possibility alone is enough to expand our definition of a habitable world. Perhaps rogue planets do not only make us think about distant places in the galaxy, they also force us to reconsider a very old question. What is truly necessary for life to begin? A source of energy? Water? The right chemistry? Time? Or some condition that we have not yet discovered? The answer may exist in places we have never thought to search. In dark oceans, beneath layers of ice, in the space between the stars, on planets without suns, and perhaps that is why we should not be too quick to conclude that darkness is the end. Darkness is sometimes simply a place where our eyes cannot see. A layer of ice may sometimes be nothing more than a door. Silence may sometimes be a story that has not yet been heard. As you prepare to drift deeper into sleep, keep that image in your mind. A solitary planet moving through the galaxy. Its surface is cold. Its sky contains no Sunday. There is no sunrise to welcome a new day. But deep below, perhaps there is still warmth. Perhaps water still exists. Perhaps geological processes continue. And perhaps, somewhere in complete darkness, some form of life exists in a way we have never imagined. We do not know. But perhaps it is precisely not knowing that makes the universe so beautiful. Because behind everything we believe we understand, there may still be another door. Behind the ice, there may be an ocean. Behind the darkness, there may be a world. And behind the silence of a rogue planet, there may be a story that humanity has not yet learned how to hear. In the next part of our journey, we will move toward another question filled with surprise. If so many planets are almost completely invisible, if they do not shine and exist at enormous distances, how can human beings know that they are there? Perhaps the answer will make us reconsider the very way we perceive the world. Because in astronomy, as in many mysteries of life, we do not always see the cause directly. Sometimes, we only see the traces it leaves behind. And from one tiny trace in the darkness, an entirely new world can begin to appear. How we discover planets without ever seeing them. There is something strangely beautiful about the way humanity explores the universe. Sometimes, to know that a world exists, we do not need to see the world itself. We only need to see what it changes. A planet may remain invisible, hidden in darkness, or overwhelmed by the light of its star. Yet its existence can still reveal itself through a tiny shadow, a subtle movement, a slight distortion of light. And perhaps that is one of the most important lessons of modern astronomy. What we cannot see directly may still leave a trace. In ordinary life, we tend to trust our eyes. We see a mountain, and we know it is there. We see someone enter a room, and their presence becomes undeniable. Seeing and knowing often seem inseparable. But the universe does not always reveal itself so easily. A distant planet may be hundreds or thousands of light years away. It may produce no light of its own. It may reflect only a tiny amount of light from its host star. And that star can be so overwhelmingly bright that the planet beside it disappears completely in the glare. Imagine trying to see a firefly flying beside an enormous searchlight from thousands of kilometers away. The firefly may be there, but the light around it makes it almost impossible to detect. Planets can be like that. They are not necessarily invisible because they do not exist. They are invisible because distance, darkness, light, and the limits of our instruments make them difficult to separate from everything around them. So, astronomers often do not search for the planet itself. They search for evidence. One of the most important methods involves watching a star's light. If a planet passes between its star and the observer, it may block a tiny fraction of that starlight. The star itself has not changed. It is simply being partially covered for a brief moment. The change can be incredibly small, but if it happens again and again, at regular intervals, scientists begin to ask questions. Why is this star becoming slightly dimmer? Why does the change repeat? Could something be passing in front of it? The planet may never appear in a photograph, but its shadow has appeared. And sometimes, a shadow is enough to begin the discovery of an entirely new world. There is something deeply elegant about this method. Science does not demand that the universe reveal everything directly. Instead, we learn to pay attention to subtle changes, a tiny decrease in brightness, a gentle movement, a repeating pattern, something almost too small to notice, and from these delicate signals, an entire planet can gradually emerge. Another method depends on gravity. When a planet orbits a star, the relationship is not as simple as a small object moving around a completely motionless one. Both objects exert gravitational influence on each other. The planet pulls on the star. The star may wobble, very slightly, from far away. We may not see the planet at all, but we can notice that the star itself appears to move in a repeating pattern. A subtle shift, a gentle oscillation, a tiny gravitational dance. And from that movement, scientists can infer that something unseen may be pulling on it. It is like standing in a room and noticing that a curtain is moving. You may not see the wind, but you see what the wind has done. Or imagine standing on the floor below someone who is walking upstairs. You may not see them directly, but you feel a vibration beneath your feet. You observe the effect, and from the effect, you begin searching for the cause. In astronomy, many discoveries begin in exactly this way. We see the consequences before we see the cause. And this idea reaches beyond astronomy. Carl Gustav Jung spent much of his life studying forces within the human mind that cannot be observed directly. The unconscious is not something we can place on a table and examine like a physical object. We cannot simply point to one location and say, "Here is the entire unconscious." Yet, that does not mean unconscious processes are absent. They can reveal themselves through dreams, through sudden emotions, through repeated behaviors, through powerful reactions that we cannot immediately explain. Sometimes we notice the movement before we understand what is creating it. A person repeatedly enters similar relationships without knowing why. Someone feels an intense fear of failure, without understanding where that fear began. A dream returns again and again. A forgotten song suddenly awakens a powerful emotion. We notice the disturbances, but we may not yet see what lies behind them. Of course, this does not mean that psychology and astronomy are the same thing. A metaphor is not scientific evidence, but the comparison can still offer something valuable. Not seeing a cause does not necessarily mean that no cause exists. In astronomy, a planet may leave a trace in the light of its star. In the human mind, a deep experience may leave traces in the way we think, feel, and respond. In both cases, the journey begins with a quiet question: what is causing this change? Another remarkable method of discovering invisible objects involves gravity and light. According to our understanding of gravity, mass can influence the path that light travels. Under the right conditions, a massive object can bend or magnify the light coming from something behind it, and then something extraordinary happens. A dark object can reveal itself by changing light that does not belong to it. It does not need to shine. It does not need to announce its presence. It only needs to exist in the right place, with enough mass, and the passing light can tell its story. There is something almost poetic about this. Sometimes, an object becomes visible not through its own light, but through the way it changes the light of something else. Perhaps human beings can be understood in a similar symbolic way. Some people enter our lives and never explain exactly what they changed. Yet afterward we see the world differently. Some experiences are long gone, but they continue to shape the path of our thoughts. Some things cannot be observed directly, yet we recognize their presence, because everything around us has somehow changed. The human mind, through Jung's lens, is not a flat surface. It has depth. There are parts illuminated by conscious awareness, and there are parts that remain in shadow. But darkness does not necessarily mean something evil. Sometimes, darkness simply means that something has not yet been clearly seen. A planet may be invisible to a telescope simply because it is too small, too dark, or hidden by brighter objects. When technology improves, what was once invisible can become ordinary data. Perhaps our understanding of ourselves can change in a similar way. A feeling that once seemed irrational may have a history. A reaction that once seemed strange may have a cause. A fear may have begun with an experience we no longer consciously remember. Sometimes, understanding does not come because reality suddenly changes. It comes because we learn to observe from a different angle. Jung wrote about the importance of bringing hidden aspects of the psyche into awareness. The task of understanding ourselves is not simply about focusing on the qualities we find beautiful or admirable. It also involves observing what we would rather avoid, the reactions that make us uncomfortable, the patterns we prefer to deny, the dreams we do not understand, not in order to judge them, but simply to notice them. This is where the spirit of science and the spirit of inner exploration become strangely similar. Before we can understand something, we must learn how to observe it. Imagine an astronomer sitting in a dark room, looking at a screen filled with data. They do not see a planet. They see a line representing the brightness of a distant star. The line remains almost flat. Then it drops slightly, and later, it returns to normal. After some time, the same thing happens again. Perhaps it is an error. Perhaps it is noise. Perhaps it is another astronomical phenomenon. Or perhaps it is a planet. Science does not rush toward the answer it wants. It checks. It observes again. It compares. It measures. It eliminates other possibilities. And slowly, through evidence, a new world begins to take shape. There is something profoundly calming about that process. We do not need to know everything immediately. Sometimes, we only need to remain with the evidence long enough. Perhaps the same patience is useful when trying to understand ourselves. Not every dream has a simple meaning. Not every emotion needs an immediate explanation. Not every repeated experience has only one cause. Some questions need to remain open for a while. Just as an astronomer may observe a signal many times before announcing the existence of a planet, we may also need to observe ourselves across time. What usually makes me react so strongly? Which patterns keep returning? What am I avoiding? Why are there moments when I feel like a stranger to myself? These questions may not always lead to comfortable answers, but they can lead to deeper awareness. And perhaps that is why this story fits so naturally into the quiet world before sleep. Night does not demand that we see everything clearly. As the light fades, our relationship with the world changes. We begin to notice sounds, sensations, and memories in different ways. A small sound can tell us that something is moving nearby. A familiar scent can carry us back to a forgotten moment. A dream can create powerful emotions even when, after waking, we cannot fully explain where they came from. There are many things in human life that are felt before they are understood. And perhaps, the universe is teaching us the same lesson. We may not see every world directly. We may not know every object hidden in the darkness. But if we remain patient, if we continue to observe, if we learn to recognize the smallest changes, then sometimes, from a tiny signal in the darkness, an entirely new world begins to appear. A distant planet can be the same. Perhaps we cannot see it, but its star is becoming slightly dimmer. Perhaps we cannot see it, but its star is beginning to wobble. Perhaps we cannot see it, but light from behind it is being bent. Perhaps we cannot see it, but another object is moving in an unusual way. And each of these signs seems to whisper the same thing. Perhaps there is something there. The word perhaps is important. It is where curiosity begins. If we were always certain that only what our eyes can see truly exists, there would never have been a search for planets beyond our solar system. And if we believed that only what we consciously recognize can influence us, we might overlook a vast part of our inner lives. But when we accept that there may be things we have not yet seen, a new space opens. A space for questions. A space for observation. A space for discovery. Perhaps that is why the universe and the human mind continue to fascinate us in strangely similar ways. Both contain regions of light and regions still unknown. Both produce phenomena whose effects we can observe before we fully understand their causes, and both require patience. An astronomer cannot force a planet to appear. A researcher cannot command data to match a desired conclusion, and a human being cannot force every secret of the mind to reveal itself immediately. Some things become clear only when we are quiet enough to notice their traces. Perhaps that is why silence matters so much. In a world filled with voices, we often search for answers by listening to more and more information. But sometimes, what we truly need is less noise. In astronomy, a small signal can disappear beneath interference. In the human mind, a subtle emotion can be buried beneath the rhythm of a busy life. And when night arrives, both may have a chance to become clearer. A telescope watches for tiny changes in light. A person lies still and becomes aware of their own breathing. A scientist studies data and notices a pattern. A dream appears as conscious awareness slowly steps back. Perhaps all of these things remind us that discovery does not always mean traveling farther. Sometimes, discovery means looking more closely, looking longer, and accepting that the most important thing may not reveal itself directly. Let us return to the image we began with. You are standing in a building. You cannot see the person on the floor above you, but the floor vibrates. A small sound echoes, and you realize that you are not completely alone in the building. Astronomy sometimes does something similar, on a scale almost impossible to imagine. We do not see the planet, but the star wobbles. We do not see the planet, but the light grows dimmer. We do not see the planet, but an orbit changes. We do not see the planet, but light from another source bends as it passes nearby. And so, from the smallest disturbances, humanity begins drawing maps of worlds that have never been directly seen. Perhaps that is what makes these discoveries so moving. A planet may be hundreds of light years away. We cannot touch it. We cannot stand upon its surface. We may not even be able to see it directly. And yet, through light, mathematics, technology, and patience, we can still learn that it is there. Perhaps, in some sense, this is one of the greatest beauties of human intelligence. We are born with limited senses, but we learn to extend them. Telescopes extend our eyes. Mathematics extends our ability to predict. Computers extend our ability to process. And curiosity extends the questions we dare to ask. Carl Gustav Jung spent much of his life expanding another form of observation, the ability to notice what human beings often overlook within themselves. He did not suggest that every unconscious process could ever be completely understood, but he invited us to pay attention to the signs: a dream, a symbol, a recurring pattern, a shadow. And sometimes, from these seemingly small things, an entire inner world begins to emerge. The universe can work in a similar way. A line of light decreases. A star wobbles. An orbit shifts slightly. A ray of light bends. And from these things, a planet appears. Not before the eyes, but within understanding. Perhaps that is the most remarkable part. A world can become visible before it is ever seen. First, it appears as a hypothesis. Then comes a signal. Then more data. More observations, more evidence, and eventually, within humanity's map of knowledge, it receives a place. A world that was once completely invisible becomes part of the universe we know. And who knows how many other planets may still be waiting for a similar trace. Perhaps, at this very moment, somewhere within vast collections of data that no one has yet fully analyzed, there is a faint signal waiting, a tiny oscillation, a subtle change in light, a sign so small that it is almost overlooked. And somewhere behind that signal, there may be a world. When we think about this, the night sky begins to look different. We no longer look only at what shines. We begin to think about what might be changing the light. We do not only look at stars. We begin to wonder what may be orbiting around them. We do not only pay attention to what is clearly present. We begin to listen for silent influences, Perhaps this is the right thought to carry with us before sleep. Not everything important appears directly before our eyes. Some things can only be recognized through their traces. Some causes reveal themselves only after we have observed long enough. Some worlds remain hidden in darkness while still changing the universe around them. And perhaps we are not so different. No one can completely see the inner world of another human being, yet we leave traces. In our words, in our choices, in the way we love, in the things we fear, and in the things we continue searching for, sometimes. To understand something invisible, we only need to notice the way it makes the world around it move. So in the next part of our journey, we will go deeper into the tools and methods humanity has developed to search for these hidden worlds. How can a tiny decrease in starlight reveal an entire planet? How can the gentle wobble of a star tell us about a world orbiting around it? How can gravity transform darkness into evidence? Because the search for hidden planets has only just begun. And the more we search, the more we begin to realize something truly strange. Perhaps the universe has never really been silent. Perhaps we are simply learning how to listen to the delicate traces it leaves behind. The ways humans hunt for invisible worlds. There is something beautiful about humanity's search for hidden planets. We have never possessed eyes large enough to see the entire universe. Every telescope has its limits. Every method of observation has its blind spots. Every instrument can listen to only a particular kind of signal within the vast symphony of space. And perhaps that is why the search for invisible worlds is not the story of one person seeing everything. It is the story of many different ways of seeing, gradually fitting together small pieces of a picture that we may never fully behold. The first, and one of the most familiar methods, is called the transit method. Its idea is remarkably subtle. When a planet passes in front of the star it orbits, it blocks a tiny fraction of that star's light. To the naked eye, this change would be almost impossible to notice. But to sufficiently precise instruments, the star's brightness drops slightly and then returns to normal. If this pattern repeats at regular intervals, astronomers begin to have reason to believe that a planet is silently passing by. It is strange to think that an entire world can be discovered through such a tiny dimming of light. We do not see the planet, we see its shadow. Or, more precisely, we recognize its presence through the way it changes the light around it. This is one of the things that makes science feel almost poetic. Sometimes, a world does not need to introduce itself. It only needs to pass through the right place at the right time and leave behind a subtle enough signal for humanity to begin following its trail. But the transit method cannot see everything. A planet's orbit must be aligned at just the right angle from our point of view for us to observe it crossing in front of its star. If it orbits the same star from another angle, the planet may still exist, still move, still experience its own cycles, in whatever way that world allows. Yet the transit method may never detect it. And here, we begin to recognize a deeper lesson. Not seeing something does not mean that it does not exist. That is also why humanity turned to another method. Radial velocity, sometimes described as the measurement of a star's motion toward and away from us. A planet does not simply orbit its star passively. Through gravity, it also pulls on the star. Of course, the star is vastly more massive, but this gravitational interaction can still cause it to wobble slightly around a shared center of mass. The star appears to move slightly toward us, then slightly away. And when a source of light moves in this way, its light can shift in a characteristic pattern that scientists are able to measure. Once again, we do not see the planet, but we see the star responding to its existence. It is like standing beside a lake and not seeing the object moving beneath the surface, yet recognizing its presence through the ripples spreading outward. The water does not tell us the entire story, but it tells us that something is moving below, and perhaps, in some way, this is also how we often recognize the hidden things within the human mind. Carl Gustav Jung spent many years observing forces that human beings cannot see directly. We cannot look at the unconscious with our eyes in the way we look into a room, but the unconscious can leave traces in dreams, symbols, unexpected reactions, and patterns that repeat throughout our lives. Jung famously wrote, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." There are forces within us that do not appear directly, yet they create certain wobbles in our lives. We do not always see the cause. Sometimes, we only recognize something through what it changes. Astronomy works in much the same way. A planet may be invisible, but its star is not completely silent. Then we come to astrometry, an even more subtle method. Instead of simply measuring changes in motion toward or away from us, scientists track extremely small changes in a star's apparent position in the sky. Imagine watching a distant light. It seems perfectly still, but if you observe it with enough precision over a long period of time, you begin to notice that it is tracing a tiny motion that the naked eye could never detect. What is making it move? Perhaps a planet. Perhaps an unseen world is pulling that star into a gravitational dance of which we can observe only one small part. Astrometry is an art of patience. It requires humanity to pay attention to changes so small that they might otherwise seem insignificant. A tiny shift against the background of the sky can contain information about an entire world at an enormous distance. And this invites another question. How many small changes in our own lives do we overlook simply because they are not dramatic enough to demand attention? A slight change in emotion, a new habit, a thought that begins appearing again and again, a recurring dream. They may not always carry some profound meaning, but sometimes, small changes are the first signs that something larger is unfolding beneath the surface. Then we arrive at one of the strangest and most beautiful methods, microlensing, or gravitational microlensing. Here, a planet does not need to shine. It only needs to have mass. When a planet or star passes between us and a more distant source of light, its gravity can bend the path of that light. Under the right conditions, the light from the background star can become temporarily magnified. A dark object can reveal its existence by changing the light of something else. That is almost a perfect metaphor for the world of invisible things. We do not see the object itself. We see the way it changes the world around it. But microlensing also has something fragile about it. Such events are often seen only once, from our particular perspective. If we miss the moment, the opportunity may not return for a very long time. Sometimes the universe gives us only a brief chance to witness the trace of another world. This makes the work of astronomers somewhat like listening for a faint sound in the night. If you are not paying attention at the right moment, it may simply disappear. Perhaps that is why patience is such an important quality in science. Not every discovery arrives with an explosion. Many discoveries arrive as a weak signal, a small change, a brief moment, something that, without preparation, we might completely overlook. And then, there is direct imaging, the attempt to photograph a planet itself. This is perhaps the closest to what we usually imagine when we think about seeing a world. Yet it is extraordinarily difficult. A planet is often extremely faint compared with its host star. The powerful light of the star can completely overwhelm the planet, much like a bright floodlight can hide a tiny point of light beside it. Scientists must use specialized technologies to suppress the star's overwhelming brightness while observing under suitable conditions and wavelengths. When a planet is finally detected directly, it is an extraordinary achievement. A world that once existed only in numbers, graphs, and models begins to acquire an image. Yet even direct imaging works only for certain kinds of planets. Once again, we encounter limitations. And perhaps that is the most important thing to remember. No single method is the perfect eye of humanity. Each method is like a window. Transit sees planets that cross along the right line of sight. Radial velocity listens to the wobble of a star. Astrometry follows tiny changes in position. Microlensing searches for distortions in light. Direct imaging attempts to see the world itself. And there is another remarkable method: pulsar timing. Pulsars are astronomical objects that can emit radio pulses with extraordinary regularity. If a planet orbits a pulsar, the planet's gravity can cause tiny changes in the timing of those pulses as they reach Earth. Those changes can be incredibly small, but within the regular rhythm of the universe, even a tiny deviation can carry enormous meaning. Imagine a clock operating with astonishing precision. If something causes its rhythm to change ever so slightly, a careful observer might begin to ask, what is affecting this clock? The answer could be a planet. A world may remain invisible, yet the timing of signals can reveal its presence. That is astonishing. An entire world can be discovered not through an image, not through its own light, but through an almost imperceptible speeding up or slowing down in the rhythm of signals arriving from space. And when all of these methods are placed side by side, a larger picture begins to emerge. There is no single way to discover the truth. Each instrument answers a different question. Each method can reveal a population of planets that another method may struggle to detect. Some large planets close to their stars may leave obvious signals. Smaller worlds may require more delicate techniques. Some distant worlds may appear only during a microlensing event. Some young and hot planets may have a chance of being directly imaged. This leads us to an important realization. Every method sees only part of the population of planets, and therefore, every map of the universe we currently possess remains incomplete. Perhaps we are seeing the planets that are easiest to find. Perhaps the most common worlds are actually the hardest ones to detect. Perhaps somewhere beyond our current reach, there are entire categories of planets that our methods are still unable to recognize. This is where science becomes humble, not because we know too little, but because the more we learn, the more clearly we understand the limits of what we know. And this has a deep similarity to the journey of self-discovery that Jung described. There is no single perspective capable of telling us everything about who a person truly is. We cannot look only at behavior and understand the entire soul. We cannot understand ourselves by looking only at memory, only at reason, or only at emotion. Each perspective is only one part. A dream gives us one part. A memory gives us one part. A choice made in the present gives us one part. An unexpected reaction gives us one part. Jung once wrote, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." Perhaps that journey is also like exploring the universe. Not a search for one final answer, but a gradual process of fitting small pieces together. No single dream explains the whole person. No single astronomical method can find every planet. No single observation is enough to grasp the entire universe. But every small piece has value. And when many pieces are placed together, what was once invisible begins to take shape. Perhaps that is also the gentlest lesson we can carry with us into the night. You do not need to see the entire road to know that you can continue walking. You do not need to understand every part of yourself immediately. You do not need to solve every mystery before allowing yourself to rest. Even the scientists studying the universe do not possess a perfect method. They simply continue observing. They try another approach. They compare the data. They remain patient with what is still unclear. Perhaps we can treat ourselves in the same way. Do not rush to conclude that something does not exist simply because you cannot see it today. Do not assume that a part of yourself has no value simply because you do not yet understand it. Do not believe that the world consists only of what appears clearly before your eyes, because somewhere out there may be planets we have not yet learned how to find. And within us, there may also be possibilities we have not yet learned how to recognize. Every method of observation is like a different way of asking a question. And sometimes, what determines what we see is not found only in the universe's answer. It is also found in the way we ask. Perhaps the transit method cannot find a particular planet, but radial velocity may detect its presence. Perhaps direct imaging fails. But microlensing opens another door, and perhaps, when one way of looking does not give us an answer, the necessary response is not always to give up. Sometimes, we simply need to change our perspective. That is what astronomers are doing every day. And it is also something human beings can learn on the journey toward understanding themselves. As the night grows quieter, imagine thousands of telescopes, satellites, and instruments silently pointing toward the sky. Not all of them are looking at the same thing. Not all of them are using the same method. But each one is trying to listen to a different part of the universe. Some are measuring light. Some are tracking movement. Some are waiting for a rare signal. Some are trying to photograph a world hidden in the overwhelming brightness of its star. And little by little, the map of invisible planets expands. Perhaps we will never be able to see the entire universe. But perhaps we do not need to see everything to feel its wonder. Because every world we discover reminds us that there are still things we do not know. Every faint signal tells us that darkness is not completely empty. And every new method opens another door. So, in the silence of the night, as we prepare to close our eyes, perhaps we can carry with us one gentle thought. The universe is not only larger than what we can see, it is also larger than what we currently know how to search for. And sometimes, a world begins to appear only at the moment when we learn an entirely new way of seeing. Gravitational microlensing, seeing what is completely dark. There are things in the universe that exist without needing to shine in order to prove their presence. This may be one of the strangest and most beautiful ideas astronomy has ever given to humanity. We often assume that, in order to be seen, an object must emit light. A star shines brilliantly because it produces its own light. The moon appears in the night because it reflects sunlight. Even the planets we can observe become visible because some source of light illuminates their surfaces. But a cold, dark planet, drifting through the depths of space, may not emit enough light for our eyes, or even our telescopes, to detect. It may exist in almost complete darkness, silently moving through space without leaving behind any direct image at all. So how can humanity find such a world? The answer lies in a remarkable phenomenon: gravitational microlensing. The astonishing thing is that we do not need to see the planet itself. We only need to see what happens to light when the planet passes through the right place. When an object with mass lies between Earth and a more distant star, the gravity of that object can alter the path of light coming from the star behind it. Light does not simply travel in a perfectly straight line through an entirely empty and unaffected space. According to our understanding of gravity and space-time, the presence of mass can curve space-time and influence the paths that light follows. When the observer, the foreground object, and the distant source of light align in the right way, the light from the distant star can temporarily become magnified. From Earth, we may see the background star suddenly grow brighter for a short period of time. The fascinating thing is that the star itself has not suddenly begun producing more energy. It is still there. It is still shining as before. What has changed is the way its light reaches us. A dark object in the foreground has become an invisible lens, and that change becomes the clue. A planet does not shine. It does not reflect enough light for us to photograph it. It may be completely immersed in darkness, yet its presence causes another star, much farther away, to suddenly appear brighter from our perspective. It is difficult not to feel a sense of wonder when thinking about this. An entire world can be discovered not through its own light, but through the way it changes the light of another world. It is like a person standing in complete darkness without saying a word. Yet their presence changes the shadow cast upon a wall. You do not see the person directly, but you know that something is there. Microlensing is especially important because it opens the possibility of finding types of planets that are difficult for many other methods to detect. Cold planets, for example, generally emit relatively little thermal radiation. Planets far from their host stars may also be difficult to detect using methods that depend on strong gravitational effects upon the star. Smaller planets produce weaker signals, and rogue planets, worlds that do not orbit any star at all, have almost no obvious address telling scientists where they should look, but their gravity still exists. And as long as gravity exists, it can leave a trace. Perhaps that is what makes gravitational microlensing so special. It does not ask whether an object is bright. It does not care whether a world is illuminated by a star. It only asks whether that object exists with enough mass to influence the space around it. In a sense, microlensing gives us an entirely different way of thinking about darkness. Darkness no longer means emptiness. A dark region of space does not mean that nothing is there. Inside that darkness, there may be a planet, a cold planet, a small world, a lonely object drifting between the stars. It sends no signal. It produces no visible announcement. No voice travels across space toward Earth, but if, by chance, it passes through exactly the right alignment, it may alter the light of a very distant star for only a few brief hours, and then it continues on its journey. One of the most thought-provoking aspects of microlensing is the temporary nature of these events. For an object with a mass comparable to Earth, a planetary microlensing signal can be very brief, sometimes lasting only hours, depending on the geometry and relative motions involved. And within that short period, a tiny change can contain information about an entire world. If no one is watching at the right moment, the signal disappears. The planet does not disappear. Only the opportunity to see its trace disappears. This is an important distinction. That world continues to exist. It continues drifting through space. Perhaps millions of years later, it will still be somewhere among the stars. But the special moment when it aligned with us and a distant background star has passed, and we may never have exactly the same opportunity again. There is something quietly sad in that thought. The universe may have sent us countless signals throughout history. While humanity lacked the technology to recognize them, perhaps thousands of planets once passed through special alignments, altering starlight for brief moments when no telescope was watching. Those worlds did not disappear from the universe. They simply passed through the boundaries of human awareness without anyone knowing. And perhaps that makes us think about the way human beings experience life itself. How many things have appeared before us when we were not yet ready to recognize them? A sentence, a meeting, an emotion, an opportunity, a very small sign. Many things do not remain long enough for us to observe them twice. But just as in astronomy, missing a signal does not mean that the signal never existed. Carl Gustav Jung was deeply interested in the things that appear at the edges of consciousness. He observed dreams, symbols, and unexpected images emerging from our inner lives. They may appear only briefly, sometimes so vaguely that when we wake, all that remains is a feeling, a face, a room, a road, a fear we cannot name. If we do not pay attention, they disappear. Like a microlensing signal, we cannot preserve a dream exactly as it was. We cannot force time to return to the same moment. But sometimes, even a brief trace is enough to open a question. Jung once wrote, "Who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakes." These words have an interesting resonance with the story of invisible worlds, because looking inward does not necessarily mean that we immediately find answers. It may simply mean learning to observe what normally passes by too quickly. A feeling that has just appeared, an image from a dream, a reaction we do not yet understand. Not every sign carries a profound message. Not every dream needs to be decoded into a single answer. But the attitude of observation suggested by Jung has something in common with science. Do not dismiss something simply because it is small. In microlensing, a signal lasting only a few hours may reveal an entire planet. In our psychological lives, a brief moment may help us recognize something we had always overlooked. Perhaps the most astonishing thing is the way scientific methods like this force humanity to become humble. We often imagine telescopes as giant eyes looking directly into the universe. But many times, science does not see in the ordinary sense. It interprets traces. A light becomes brighter. A curve appears on a graph. A signal lasts for a certain period. A change does not match what was expected. And from these clues, humanity begins to construct a hypothesis about a world that has never been directly seen. This is a combination of observation and disciplined imagination. Not imagination without limits, but the ability to ask, what could produce this signal? Then to test it, compare it, search for additional evidence, and sometimes a planet is discovered. This reminds us that truth does not always stand directly in front of us. Sometimes, truth lies behind what we observe. Microlensing is particularly fascinating when used in the search for rogue planets. Imagine a world with no sunday. It does not orbit a star. There is no starlight falling upon its surface to make its presence easier to recognize. It may drift through a vast region of space completely unknown to anyone. A completely solitary world. If it does not pass in front of the right distant source of light, and if no telescope is observing at the right moment, it may remain invisible. But then, for one brief moment, its path and the light from a distant star happen to align. The planet's gravity changes the path of that light. A signal appears. Instruments record it. Scientists analyze it. And a world that was once completely anonymous suddenly becomes part of humanity's map of knowledge. There is something beautiful in that journey. A world does not need to call for attention in order to be discovered. It only needs to exist. And at the right moment, that existence leaves a trace. Perhaps this is also why stories about the universe can touch such personal thoughts within us. They do not speak only about the distances between stars. They remind us that reality is never limited to what we immediately see. There are planets in darkness. There are invisible gravitational forces. There is light being altered. There are signals that last only a few hours. And there are things that become clear only when we look from another perspective. Jung once wrote, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." Placed beside the story of microlensing, these words create an interesting symbolic connection. To discover a dark planet, scientists do not necessarily need to make that planet shine. Instead, they learn to observe the effects that its darkness creates. In a metaphorical sense, perhaps human beings can also learn to face the parts of themselves that remain unknown. Not by pretending they do not exist, not by filling every silence with noise, but by observing, by remaining patient, by waiting for traces. Still, one important distinction should be remembered. The comparison between the universe and psychology is only a way of reflecting. A planet is discovered through physical data and scientific models. The human mind is complex in an entirely different way. But perhaps the distance between these two fields is precisely what makes the comparison interesting. Both scientific exploration and self-observation begin with the ability to admit we do not yet know everything. And perhaps this is the gentlest lesson that gravitational microlensing can offer us. We do not need to see everything directly before we begin asking questions. A small change can be worth noticing. A brief signal can contain an entire world. A dark space does not necessarily mean an empty space. As you lie down at the end of the day, imagine a rogue planet drifting through the space between the stars. There is no sunrise, no sunset in the familiar sense, no sun rising above its horizon. It moves through the darkness of the galaxy on a journey that perhaps no living creature on Earth can observe directly. Then, in a rare moment, it passes through the light of a distant star. That light bends. It brightens. A signal appears. And from far away, on a small planet called Earth, some instrument may notice the change. Only a few hours, perhaps even less. Then everything returns to normal. But during those few brief hours, humanity has had an opportunity to see the trace of an invisible world. Perhaps we will never know everything that drifts through the darkness. Perhaps countless planets have passed and continue to pass without leaving any detectable signal for us. But every time a signal is discovered, it reminds us that the universe is larger than our current ability to observe it. And more importantly, it reminds us that invisible does not mean non-existent. Sometimes, what we need is not more light, but a more subtle way of seeing, a better way of listening, a patience deep enough to notice the smallest change. Because perhaps, in a moment when it seems that nothing is happening, an entirely unfamiliar world is quietly passing through the light of a distant star, and in the immense darkness of the universe, for only a few brief hours, it leaves behind a trace strong enough to say, "I am here." The blind spots of technology. Perhaps one of the most humbling lessons modern science can teach us is this: not everything that exists has an opportunity to be seen by us. When we look up at the night sky, it is easy to feel that what our telescopes observe represents the universe beyond us. We see stars, discover exoplanets, measure light, record motion, and gradually build increasingly complex maps of space. But behind every discovery, there is a quiet question. Are we observing the universe as it truly is? Or are we observing only the part of the universe that our abilities allow us to see? This is one of the most fascinating aspects of the search for hidden planets. No method is perfect. Every instrument is like a window opened into an enormous wall. Through that window, we can see part of the landscape, but that does not mean the rest of the world does not exist. It simply lies beyond our field of view. The transit method, for example, has helped humanity discover thousands of exoplanets. But for a planet to be detected this way, its orbit must align in a very particular way with our perspective from Earth. The planet must pass in front of its star in such a way that we can observe the star's light dimming slightly. If its orbit is tilted by even a certain angle, the planet may continue orbiting its star, continue existing in space, and yet never pass in front of the star from our point of view. This means there may be countless planets existing within star systems we have studied carefully, yet we cannot detect them using the transit method simply because they are not positioned correctly to create the shadow we need. The world itself has not disappeared. Only its trace has disappeared from our particular method of observation. The radial velocity method has its own limitations. It depends on the gravitational influence a planet exerts on its host star. A large planet may produce a clearer wobble. A smaller planet, especially one located far away, may create only a very weak signal. To detect its presence, instruments must be sensitive enough. Observations must continue for a sufficient amount of time, and scientists must be able to separate the genuine signal from countless other sources of noise. As a result, large planets or planets orbiting close to their stars are often easier to detect. This creates an observational bias. If we rely only on what is easy to discover, we may begin to imagine that large worlds close to their stars are far more common than they actually are. But that may not necessarily be true. They may simply be the worlds our instruments are best at finding. Imagine standing on a beach at night with a flashlight. Your beam can illuminate only a limited area. You see large rocks near the shore, but you cannot see the smaller grains of sand farther away. If you then conclude that the beach is made mostly of large rocks, you may be mistaken. Not because your eyes are wrong, not because the rocks do not exist, but because your light only allows you to see a portion of what is there. Our technology is similar. It is not a perfect mirror reflecting the entirety of reality. It is a tool, and every tool has limitations. Direct imaging, the attempt to photograph a planet directly, may sound like the simplest approach. We might imagine simply pointing a telescope toward a planet and taking its picture, but reality is far more complicated. A planet is usually extraordinarily faint compared with its star. The star's light can be so powerful that it completely overwhelms the planet. To observe a planet directly, conditions must often be unusually favorable. The planet may need to be bright enough, sufficiently separated from its star in the sky, and located within the limits of what current technology can distinguish. This means that an Earth-like planet orbiting close to a Sun-like star may be far more difficult to observe directly than a young, hot, massive planet orbiting farther away from its star. Once again, technology creates a kind of selection. The universe does not choose which planets exist for us. Our methods of observation influence which planets can most easily enter the field of human knowledge. Even microlensing, a method that seems capable of detecting dark and distant worlds, has a delicate weakness. A gravitational microlensing event usually occurs only when several objects align in a very particular configuration. The signal may appear briefly and then disappear. If we miss that moment, the opportunity may never return. The planet continues to exist, but the trace that allowed us to recognize it has passed away. This makes the search for planets somewhat like standing in a vast forest and trying to hear a bird that sings only once. If you are not present at the right moment, or if the wind is too loud, you may never know that the sound ever existed. That is why astronomers must use many methods together, because every method has strengths, and every method has blind spots. Perhaps even more thought-provoking is the way these blind spots can influence our understanding of the entire population of planets in the universe. Large, hot planets orbiting close to their stars often produce stronger signals. They may block more starlight during a transit. They may create more noticeable gravitational effects. Some young planets also retain heat from their formation, making them easier to observe at certain wavelengths. As a result, throughout the history of exoplanet discovery, we have often encountered worlds with characteristics that our technology can detect most easily. But what about small planets? What about cold planets? What about worlds orbiting far from their host stars? What about planets drifting freely through the vast spaces between stars? They may not be rare. They may simply be difficult to find. This is an extremely important distinction. Being rare in the data does not necessarily mean being rare in reality. Something that appears infrequently in our observations may simply reveal that we have not yet developed a sufficiently effective way to observe it. Science calls this a form of observational bias or selection bias. Data does not only tell the story of the objects we study, it also carries the fingerprints of the methods we use to search for them. And this is where the story of hidden planets begins to touch a broader reflection. Carl Gustav Jung spent much of his life studying the limits of human self-perception. We often believe that we understand ourselves because we are conscious of our thoughts and actions. But Jung suggested that consciousness is only one part of the larger psychological landscape. There are regions beyond direct awareness. Yet that does not make them unimportant. Jung famously wrote, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." It is a powerful idea, because it suggests that what we cannot see may still influence what we can see. An invisible planet can make a star wobble. An unconscious process can influence a conscious decision. We see the result, but we do not always see the entire cause. Of course, astronomy and psychology are entirely different fields. One studies physical objects in space, while the other explores the structures and experiences of the human mind. But the image of the blind spot creates a thought-provoking parallel. We often assume that the world is what we can see, but perhaps the world is larger than our field of view. We often assume that we are only what we consciously know about ourselves, but perhaps human beings are deeper and wider than the part illuminated by consciousness. Jung also wrote, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." Placed beside the search for invisible planets, this idea allows us to see darkness differently. Darkness is not necessarily something frightening. Sometimes, darkness is simply a region that the light of observation has not yet reached. A small, cold planet is not mysterious because it is intentionally hiding from us. It may simply lie beyond the reach of our current abilities. Perhaps some parts of ourselves are similar. They are not necessarily hidden deliberately. Maybe we simply have not yet developed the right tools to recognize them. In astronomy, that tool may be a new telescope, a more sensitive detector, a better algorithm, a different method of observation. In human life, the tool may sometimes be silence, an honest conversation, a dream written down, a long enough period of time spent observing ourselves, an experience that causes us to see everything differently. What matters is that we do not rush to believe that what we have not seen does not exist. Perhaps this is the deepest meaning behind a simple idea. We do not merely see what exists, we see what our technology allows us to find. The sentence may seem to belong only to astronomy, but it contains a broader philosophy of perception. Every pair of eyes has limitations. Every microscope has a resolution limit. Every telescope has a range of observation. Every method has strengths and weaknesses. Even the human brain does not absorb all the information surrounding us. We are constantly filtering, paying attention to one thing and ignoring another, recognizing what is familiar more quickly than what is unfamiliar, searching for patterns that confirm what we already expect. In a sense, we also have technological blind spots within the mind itself, and perhaps maturity begins at the moment we recognize this, not when we believe we understand everything, but when we realize that we may be missing something. There is a beautiful humility in that realization. A good scientist does not say, "If I have not detected it, it does not exist." Instead, science often asks a more careful question. Given our current methods, how likely are we to detect it? That is a profound difference. The first question closes the door. The second opens a new search. And when we bring that same spirit into life, perhaps we become gentler with the things we do not yet understand. Perhaps a person is not entirely what they appear to be during a first meeting. Perhaps an emotion is not entirely what it seems on the surface. Perhaps a failure does not have only one cause. Perhaps a dark period in life is not completely empty. Perhaps it contains something we have not yet learned how to see. Jung once said, "Who looks outside dreams. Who looks inside awakes." Perhaps awakening here does not mean reaching a state in which we know everything. Perhaps it simply means recognizing that our perspective will always have limits, and from that realization, we begin to observe more carefully. The universe has no obligation to reveal itself in ways that suit our instruments. A planet does not need to pass in front of its star just so we can easily detect it. It does not need to be large enough to create a powerful gravitational wobble. It does not need to be hot enough to shine. It does not need to appear at exactly the moment when a telescope happens to be watching. That world simply exists, and our task is to find a way to recognize it. Perhaps there are countless small, cold, and dark planets out there that humanity has never known about. They may orbit distant stars, drift freely between stellar systems, or exist at such immense distances that their orbital periods last longer than an entire human lifetime. We have not seen them, but that does not mean the sky has run out of secrets. On the contrary, the blind spots of our technology remind us that the universe may be far richer than our current maps suggest. As you lie down and prepare to close your eyes tonight, perhaps take a moment to think about that. Maybe the sky above us is not empty at all. Between the stars we can see, there may exist countless worlds that do not shine, do not send powerful signals, and do not appear in any photograph. Small worlds, cold worlds, distant worlds, worlds that our technology is not yet capable of finding, and still, they are there. They do not need to be seen by us in order to exist. Perhaps that is both a humbling and comforting thought, because if the universe still contains things we cannot yet see, then its mysteries are far from over. The sky has not yet been completely read, and in the deep darkness beyond the limits of our technology, there may still be countless worlds waiting for the day humanity invents a new way of seeing, a new way of recognizing that they were there all along. planetary systems that still contain vast unexplored regions. There is a truth that makes the journey of exploring the universe both wondrous and humbling. The universe moves according to rhythms of time that a human lifetime can barely keep up with. We are born, we grow, we live through years that may seem endlessly long, and then one day realize that an entire lifetime is only a brief moment on nature's immense cosmic clock. During that time, Earth completes many journeys around the sun. Seasons come and go, and generations replace one another. Yet in the more distant regions of planetary systems, there are worlds for which a single orbit may take decades, centuries, or even far longer. Generally speaking, the farther a planet is from its star, the longer its orbital period tends to be. This means that the time required to complete one journey around its star increases. For a planet close to its star, a year may last only a few days or months. But at greater distances, a planet must travel across a much larger orbit and moves more slowly under the influence of its star's gravity. As a result, a year on such a world may be so long that a person could be born, grow into adulthood, grow old, and perhaps never witness the planet complete a single full orbit. Pause for a moment and imagine it. Somewhere in the Milky Way, a planet is beginning a long journey around its star. When that planet passes through a particular region of its orbit, perhaps the earliest human civilizations on Earth have not yet appeared. Generations of people will be born and disappear. Cities will rise and change. Languages will emerge and perhaps vanish. Countless lives will unfold, each carrying its own joys, sorrows, hopes, and memories. Meanwhile, that distant planet continues to move, slowly, silently, without hurry, and perhaps hundreds of years later, it will finally return to a region near where it once traveled before. Time in the universe seems to possess none of humanity's impatience. Perhaps that is what makes the search for distant planets so difficult. Modern science may possess powerful telescopes, sophisticated satellites, and computer systems capable of processing enormous quantities of data. Yet technology, no matter how advanced, must still confront one fundamental limitation. We need time to observe motion. If a planet takes 100 years to complete a single orbit, an observing program lasting only a few years can reveal only a tiny portion of that journey. We may notice the first signs. We may detect a change in the motion of a star. We may identify an unusual orbit. We may construct a predictive model. But to understand the entire system, scientists sometimes simply have to wait. And waiting, in science, is also part of knowledge. There is something beautiful about this thought. We often imagine science as a race toward greater speed, faster telescopes, more powerful computers, larger amounts of data, but some secrets of the universe cannot be solved simply by moving faster. Some things can only be known after enough time has passed. We cannot force a planet to complete its orbit. We cannot ask the sky to change more quickly. We cannot make a distant world move according to the rhythm of our lives. And so, some scientific projects are built not only for the people living today, but for generations yet to come. An astronomer may begin observing a star and never see the final result of that research during their lifetime. The first data recorded today may become the foundation for a discovery made decades later. This means that human knowledge sometimes resembles a conversation carried across generations. One person observes, another continues. One group records the data, another develops better tools to analyze it. And one day, the pieces that once seemed disconnected are finally placed together. A planet is discovered, an orbit is confirmed, a mystery begins to unfold. But such a discovery does not belong to a single moment. It is the result of patience passed from one generation to the next. Perhaps this is one of the most beautiful forms of faith in the future. We begin work whose ending we may never personally see, and still, we continue. From the perspective of Carl Gustav Jung, Human beings are not creatures existing entirely apart from the flow of time. Each of us is born into a world that existed long before us. We inherit language, symbols, stories, cultural memories, and psychological patterns that have traveled through many generations. Jung once wrote, "The psyche is the greatest of all cosmic wonders and the sine qua non of the world as an object." This thought suggests something profound. We often look at the universe as something outside ourselves, yet the mind is the place through which the universe becomes something that can be known. Stars existed before human beings. Planets may have orbited their stars for billions of years. But for these things to become part of knowledge, there must be a consciousness curious enough to look upward and ask a question. And sometimes, a question lives longer than the person who first asked it. Perhaps this is why the search for distant planets is not merely a story about technology. It is also a story about the patience of human consciousness in the presence of something greater than itself. Even the star systems closest to us may not yet be fully explored. This can be surprising. We tend to assume that the nearest places must also be the best understood. But in astronomy, near can still mean an enormous distance. A star system, only a few light years away, remains far beyond humanity's ability to reach directly with current means of travel. We observe it primarily through light, signals, and indirect traces. We may already know of several planets within such a system, but are they all that exist? A smaller planet may not yet produce a sufficiently clear signal. A distant planet may require many years of observation. A planet whose orbit is not aligned with Earth may never produce a transit. A cold and dark world may remain almost invisible to our current instruments. And so, even a star system that seems familiar may still contain vast, unexplored regions. This reminds us that the map is not the territory. What has been marked on the map of human knowledge is only the part we have discovered. Empty spaces do not necessarily mean that nothing is there. They may simply be places where we do not yet have enough data. Perhaps somewhere out there exists a planet whose light or whose indirect signature has never reached any human-made sensor. Not because it is impossibly mysterious, not because it is deliberately hiding, but simply because we have not observed long enough, looked in the right direction, or developed the right tool. There is a quiet beauty in that idea. The universe is not necessarily trying to hide itself from us. It is simply larger than our ability to observe it. Carl Jung often reflected on the difference between what consciousness knows and the far wider realm that lies beyond the direct light of awareness. He wrote, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." If we treat this as a metaphorical connection, an interesting thought emerges. Some parts of reality can influence us even before we know they exist. In astronomy, a planet may affect the movement of another object before we discover the planet itself. We may observe an unusual orbit before finding its cause. In human life, we sometimes see the consequences before we understand the cause. A repeating pattern, a persistent fear, a familiar choice, a reaction that is difficult to explain. But just as astronomers cannot draw conclusions about an entire planetary system from a single observation, we should not rush to define our entire selves based on a single moment. Understanding takes time. Some things only become visible when we look back across many years. Some experiences gain meaning only when placed beside other experiences. An event that happens today may have no explanation yet, but years later, when we look back, we may realize that it was part of a larger orbit in the story of our lives. And perhaps this is what makes the story of distant planets so fitting for the quiet hours before sleep. Night reminds us that not everything needs to be completed right now. Some questions can be left for tomorrow. Some mysteries require many years to unfold. Some planets need hundreds of years to complete a single orbit. If even the universe moves according to rhythms so vast, perhaps we do not need to demand that we understand everything in a single day. There is a certain peace in realizing that we are standing at only one small point within a much longer process. A scientist who observes a star for 10 years may feel that they have seen only the beginning of its story. A person looking back on life at the age of 50 may realize that what happened at 20 was never the final chapter. One generation may begin a search, another generation may complete it, and a question may live longer than the person who first asked it. And that does not make the search meaningless. On the contrary, it makes every small contribution part of something greater. Perhaps one day, future technology will return to star systems that we have been observing for decades. Old data will be combined with new measurements. Signals once dismissed as noise may be recognized as carrying an entirely different meaning. And a new planet may appear, not because it has just been born, but because, at last, we have been patient enough to recognize it. Perhaps that is the most remarkable thing about unexplored regions. They exist beside us, without needing to change. What changes is humanity's ability to see. A distant world continues to orbit its star. A small planet continues its journey. A dark object continues drifting through space. We simply have not seen them yet, but perhaps one day we will. And when that moment comes, we will understand that the universe has not suddenly become richer. It was rich from the beginning. Only our map has expanded. Perhaps this is one of the most beautiful thoughts to carry with us as night falls. Above us is a sky in which even the nearest regions may still contain things we do not yet know. Planets may be orbiting far away. Small worlds may be silently passing through regions of darkness. Long orbital paths may still contain too little data to be recognized. And perhaps somewhere, a planet is traveling along an orbit so vast that it will not complete its journey until many more generations of human beings have come and gone. But it does not need to wait for us. The universe has its own time, and in that slowness, it teaches us something simple. Not every mystery refuses to reveal itself. Sometimes, it simply needs to be waited for long enough. So, if tonight you look up at the sky and feel that you are seeing only a few points of light scattered across an endless darkness, remember that behind what you can see, countless other worlds may exist. Worlds too small to detect, too cold to shine, too distant to observe for long enough, or simply moving along an angle that our eyes have never been able to reach. And it is precisely these unknown spaces that make the universe more than merely vast. They make it forever larger than we once imagined. Planets, discovered through mathematics. Some discoveries in the history of science begin with something very small. A mismatch. Not a brilliant light suddenly appearing in the sky. Not a new object unexpectedly revealing itself to human eyes. Sometimes, everything begins with a number that is slightly different. A movement that does not entirely follow prediction. An orbit that seems to be telling scientists, there is something here that we have not yet seen. That is one of the special beauties of science. Human beings do not always discover worlds with their eyes. Sometimes, we discover them through patience, through logic, through equations, and through the willingness not to ignore something unusual simply because it appears too small. Imagine that you are watching a leaf floating across the surface of a lake. You know which direction the wind is blowing. You know where the current is moving. And so, you believe you can predict how the leaf will travel. But suddenly, the leaf changes direction, only slightly, not dramatically. Perhaps the first time, you assume it is simply an error in your observation, but then the same change continues to appear. You watch more carefully and begin to realize that perhaps beneath the surface there is a current you cannot see. You do not see the current itself, but you see its consequences. And from those consequences, you begin searching for the cause. That is also the spirit behind the story of planets discovered through mathematics. Observe the effect, detect an anomaly, predict an invisible object, calculate its position, search for it. At first glance, this sequence may seem simple, but behind it lies one of the most extraordinary abilities of the human mind. The ability to reason about something that has never been seen. We often assume that only when our eyes see an object can we confidently say that it exists. But nature does not always reveal itself directly to us. Some things are hidden, some are too distant, some are too dark. Some forces cannot be seen with the naked eye, and yet they still leave traces. A planet can alter the movement of another planet. An unseen object can pull an orbit away from its expected path. An invisible force can cause a system to behave differently from what we predict. And when the difference becomes clear enough, a question emerges. If everything we already know is correct, then what is still missing? That question led to one of the most beautiful stories in the history of astronomy, the discovery of Neptune. During the 19th century, astronomers noticed that the motion of Uranus did not perfectly match predictions based on the known planets of the solar system. Uranus's orbit contained small but noticeable deviations. It was not complete chaos. It was not evidence that the laws of physics had failed. On the contrary, it was precisely because those laws worked so well that scientists could recognize that something had not yet been included in their calculations. If Uranus was being influenced by an unknown gravitational force, then what was producing that force? A bold hypothesis emerged. Perhaps another planet existed beyond Uranus. What is remarkable is that mathematicians did not begin by pointing toward the sky and saying, "Let us search for a new planet." They began with numbers. They analyzed the deviations. They calculated the effects of gravity. They estimated mass. They predicted a position. And then the sky was searched. Eventually, Neptune was observed close to the location predicted by mathematical calculations. It was a powerful moment for the human intellect. A world that had never been seen had been inferred before it appeared in a telescope, not through magic, not through intuition alone, but through a chain of reasoning based on the traces it had left behind. There is something almost poetic about this. A distant planet could have been completely unaware that anyone was searching for it. It continued to orbit the Sunday. It continued moving through darkness. It continued obeying the physical laws of the universe. Meanwhile, on Earth, people who had never seen it sat before pages of calculations, studying numbers, and gradually reaching a remarkable conclusion. Somewhere out there, there is another world. This reminds us that mathematics is not merely a collection of dry symbols. In human hands, it can become a way of listening to the universe. An equation does not create a planet, nor does it replace observation, but it can tell us where we should look. In moments like these, mathematics can be compared to a lamp being lit inside a dark room. It does not make the room any smaller. It simply helps us realize that somewhere in the darkness, something is present. The story of Neptune also teaches us something important about anomalies. In life, we often want everything to unfold according to expectation. A stable system makes us feel secure, but in science, sometimes the unexpected is a gift. A deviation may be an error, but it may also be a doorway. If scientists had simply ignored the unusual movements of Uranus and decided that the discrepancies were not important, perhaps the history of Neptune's discovery would have unfolded differently. But curiosity made people pause, observe again, check again, ask questions. And from something that was not behaving as expected, a new world was discovered. Perhaps this is where the story of astronomy begins to intersect in an interesting way with Carl Gustav Jung's view of human psychological life. Jung was deeply interested in the things we do not fully recognize consciously, yet which still reveal themselves outwardly. A recurring dream, an unusually intense emotional reaction, a pattern of behavior that appears again and again, a choice that we ourselves cannot explain, yet somehow continue making. In a certain sense, these things can resemble deviations in an orbit. We do not necessarily understand their causes immediately. Imagine, but do not be too quick to believe. Hold space for the possibility. Follow the clues. Examine the evidence. and allow reality itself to decide whether the hidden world is truly there. That is perhaps the most disciplined form of wonder. The ability to stand before a mystery without immediately trying to turn it into certainty. Planet 9 may exist, or it may not. The evidence may eventually lead astronomers to a distant, massive world moving silently through the outer reaches of the solar system. Or future observations may reveal that the strange patterns we see today have an entirely different explanation. Either outcome would teach us something, and perhaps that is the deeper meaning of scientific exploration. The goal is not to prove that our imagination was correct. The goal is to discover what is true, even when the truth is different from what we hope to find. Because the universe does not owe us confirmation. It does not have to match our expectations. It only has to be what it is. And our task is to learn how to see it more clearly. So somewhere beyond Neptune, in the immense darkness at the edge of the solar system, there may or may not be another great world. Perhaps it is there now, moving slowly through a vast orbit that takes thousands of years to complete. Perhaps sunlight touches its distant surface so faintly that no human eye has yet recognized it. Perhaps its gravity is leaving subtle fingerprints on the smaller worlds around it. Or perhaps the real explanation lies somewhere else entirely. For now, we do not know. And that uncertainty is not a weakness. It is the beginning of the search. Tonight, as you prepare to close your eyes, imagine the farthest regions of our own solar system. Beyond the familiar planets, beyond Neptune, beyond the worlds that appear on the maps we learn to recognize. There are vast regions of darkness, frozen objects drifting through space, distant bodies following enormous orbits, and perhaps mysteries that humanity has not yet learned how to interpret. Maybe somewhere in that darkness, a hidden planet is waiting to be found. Or maybe the darkness is waiting to teach us that we have been asking the wrong question. Either way, the universe remains larger than our certainty, and perhaps that is what makes it so beautiful. We do not need to know everything tonight. We do not need every mystery to be solved before we can rest. Some questions can remain open. Some worlds can remain unseen. Some possibilities can continue their silent journey through the darkness while humanity slowly learns how to look. Because perhaps the greatest discoveries do not begin when we find an answer. Perhaps they begin much earlier. At the moment when we look at something familiar, notice that it does not completely make sense, and quietly ask, what if there is something here that we have not yet seen? But do not rush to believe. Form a hypothesis, but test it. Search, but remain willing to accept that you may be wrong. That is a mature form of curiosity. And perhaps it is also a lesson perfectly suited to the quiet reflections before sleep. Not every question needs an immediate answer. Not every mystery has to be solved in a single night. Some questions may remain at the frontier of knowledge for years. Generations of scientists may continue searching for an answer that the generations before them could not find. Perhaps one day, a new telescope will detect a faint point of light moving exactly as the models predicted. Perhaps Planet 9 will finally be confirmed, and if that happens, humanity will have to write another chapter in the story of the solar system. But the opposite may also happen. New data may show that a large planet is not necessary to explain those unusual orbits. Another explanation may emerge, and if that happens, science will not have failed. Because the purpose of science is not to protect a beautiful hypothesis. Its purpose is to move closer to what actually exists. That is what makes Planet 9 beautiful in such a special way. It exists between two possibilities. On one side is the possibility of a massive world silently orbiting the Sun at a distance so great that we have never seen it. On the other is the possibility that those unusual clues have an entirely different explanation. Both possibilities force us to keep observing, and perhaps it is precisely the fact that we do not yet know that keeps the story alive. As you prepare to drift into sleep tonight, imagine the vast region of darkness beyond Neptune. There, sunlight grows weaker. Frozen objects move slowly through the cold emptiness. Their elongated orbits stretch across spans of time that a human life can witness only in the smallest fragments. And somewhere out there, perhaps there is a large world. No one knows for certain, no one has seen it. But if it exists, it may be moving through the darkness at this very moment, silently, without sound, without enough reflected light to draw our attention. While here on Earth, human beings continue to calculate, observe. Perhaps that is a beautiful image of the nature of discovery itself. On one side is the universe, vast and silent. On the other is humanity, small but endlessly curious. Between them is darkness, and within that darkness there may be nothing. Or there may be a world we have never known. We cannot yet say for certain, but we can continue looking. And sometimes, the simple existence of an unanswered question is enough to make the sky feel even larger. Could there still be a massive planet hidden in the darkness of our own solar system? Perhaps. For now, the most honest answer remains: we do not know. And from those three simple words, a scientific journey continues. Worlds forming within the dust. There are things in the universe that are not hidden because they are too distant, too small, or completely lost in darkness. Sometimes, a world cannot yet be seen simply because it is still surrounded by the very place that gave birth to it. A planet may be forming, growing, little by little, while around it lies a dense ocean of gas and dust. We look toward a young star, and instead of seeing the planet itself, we see a vast region of apparent chaos. Yet within that chaos, new worlds may be quietly coming into existence. Imagine a star that is still very young. Around it is not the empty space we often imagine when we think about the universe. Instead, there is an enormous disk of material made of gas, dust, and tiny particles moving around the star. Over time, under the influence of gravity, particles collide, stick together, and accumulate. From these small structures, larger bodies may gradually emerge. This is not a process that unfolds in perfect stillness. It is a process filled with movement. Gas swirls, dust collides, matter gathers, gravity pulls tiny particles toward one another, and somewhere within that disk of material, a world may be beginning to form. What is fascinating is that we do not always need to see the planet directly in order to suspect that it exists. A forming planet can influence the environment around it. Its gravity may alter the movement of gas and dust. It may help create gaps within the disk of material. It may be associated with rings of dust, spiral structures, or regions of complex motion. So before we see a world, scientists may sometimes see the traces that the world has left behind. There is something beautiful about that idea. A planet may not yet appear clearly before our eyes, but the world around it has already begun to change. It is like the wind. We cannot see the wind itself, yet we know it is there when the leaves begin to move. It is like someone who has just passed through a room. We may not see the person, but the curtain is still gently moving. The universe can be like that too. There are objects that do not yet reveal themselves directly, yet their existence seems to be written into the movements around them. And the disk of gas and dust becomes a kind of memory of the process of formation. It preserves traces, gaps, rings, spirals, patterns, regions of turbulence. Astronomers observe these structures and ask, what created this shape? Could a planet be forming here? Or is another physical mechanism responsible? Science does not rush to turn every trace into a conclusion. A gap in a disk does not necessarily mean that a planet is always present. Other physical processes can also create complex structures. That is why scientists must combine observations with models, data, and multiple methods of investigation. But the ability to read these traces has opened a remarkable door. We are not only searching for planets that have already become mature worlds, we can also try to observe worlds while they are still becoming themselves. Perhaps that is one of the strangest and most beautiful moments in astronomy. A fully formed planet is a world. But a planet in the process of formation is a story. It gives us the opportunity to witness the process rather than merely the result. And that process is often far more complex than our imagination once assumed. A world does not necessarily appear all at once. It is built through countless small movements. One grain of dust collides with another. A fragment of matter is held by gravity. A small structure slowly becomes something larger, and across immense spans of time, a planet may emerge. Perhaps this is why the image of a world forming within dust has such a powerful connection to the way Carl Gustav Jung thought about human beings. Jung was deeply interested in the processes that take place beneath the surface of consciousness. Human beings do not always immediately recognize who they are becoming. A profound transformation in the inner life rarely arrives as a complete flash of lightning. Sometimes, it begins with very small signs, a recurring dream, a question that keeps returning, a feeling that one's current life no longer feels completely right, something that once mattered suddenly becoming unfamiliar, an impulse that cannot yet be given a name. We may not yet see the new person we are capable of becoming, but sometimes the inner environment has already begun to change. Jung wrote, "Who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakes." Looking inward does not necessarily mean finding an answer that has been waiting for us all along. It can be more like observing a disk of material in motion. We may not immediately understand every structure. We may see only the earliest signs. But if we observe patiently, we may begin to recognize that movements which once appeared chaotic could belong to a deeper process. Human life can be like that too. Not every form of chaos is meaningless. Not every period of feeling lost is a failure. Sometimes, old structures need to change before a new one can emerge. The disk of dust around a young star is not an empty place. It is an environment filled with possibility. It contains unstable material, incomplete movements, and structures that are constantly changing. If we look at it while expecting to see a perfect planet immediately, we may see only chaos. But if we understand it as a place where something is forming, then that chaos begins to carry a different meaning. Perhaps human life also contains its own disks of dust, periods when everything seems unclear. We do not know where we are going. We do not know what is ending. We do not know what is beginning. Yet beneath the surface, invisible forces may still be at work. Experiences accumulate. Memories connect. New understandings slowly change the way we see the world. A part of ourselves may be forming, even though we do not yet have a name for it. Jung wrote, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." This idea can be placed beside the image of a planet being born from dust. Becoming is not a single moment. It is a process. No one wakes up one morning and suddenly understands their entire self. Just as a planet does not appear fully formed out of empty space, there is accumulation, there is movement, there are collisions, there are moments when things seem to fall apart, and sometimes there is a long period during which nothing appears to be happening while deep beneath the surface, a new structure is quietly taking shape. But don't rush to believe. Form a hypothesis, but test it. Search, but be ready to accept that you may be wrong. That is a mature form of curiosity. And it is also a lesson well suited to reflection before sleep. Because not every question needs an answer immediately. Not every mystery has to be solved in a single night. Some things may remain at the frontier of knowledge for many years. Generations of scientists may continue searching for an answer that the previous generation could not find. Perhaps one day, a new telescope will detect a faint point of light moving exactly as the models predicted. Perhaps Planet 9 will be confirmed, and then humanity will have to write another chapter in the story of the solar system. But the opposite may also happen. New data may show that a large planet is not needed to explain those unusual orbits. Another explanation may emerge, and if that happens, science will still not have failed. Because the goal of science is not to protect a beautiful hypothesis. The goal is to move closer to what truly exists. That is what makes Planet 9 beautiful in such a special way. It lies between two possibilities. On one side is a massive world quietly orbiting the Sun at such a great distance that we have never seen it. On the other side is the possibility that the unusual clues have an entirely different explanation. Both possibilities force us to keep observing, and perhaps it is precisely not knowing that keeps the story alive. As you prepare to fall asleep tonight, try to imagine the vast region of darkness beyond Neptune. There, sunlight grows weaker. Icy objects move slowly through the cold emptiness. Their orbits stretch across spans of time that a human life can witness only in the smallest part. And somewhere, there may be a large world. No one knows for certain. No one has seen it. But if it exists, it may be moving through the darkness at this very moment, silently, without sound, without enough light to attract attention. While on Earth, human beings continue to calculate, observe, and search. Perhaps that is a beautiful image of the nature of discovery. On one side is the universe, vast and silent. On the other side is humanity, small but endlessly asking questions. Between the two is darkness, and in that darkness, there may be nothing. Or there may exist a world we have never known. We cannot say for certain, but we can continue looking. And sometimes, the simple existence of an unanswered question is enough to make the sky feel larger. Could there still be a large planet hidden in the darkness of our own solar system? Perhaps for now, the most honest answer remains, we do not know. And from those three simple words, a scientific journey continues. Worlds forming in dust. There are things in the universe that are not hidden because they are too distant, too small, or completely submerged in darkness. Sometimes, a world cannot yet be seen simply because it is still inside the very place that gave birth to it. A planet may be forming, growing, little by little, while surrounded by a dense sea of gas and dust. We look toward a young star, and instead of seeing the planet, we see a vast region of chaos. Yet within that chaos, new worlds may be quietly coming into existence. Imagine a very young star. Around it is not the empty space we often imagine when thinking about the universe. Instead, there is a vast disk of matter composed of gas, dust, and tiny particles moving around the star. Over time, under the influence of gravity, particles collide, stick together, and accumulate. From these small structures, larger celestial bodies may gradually emerge. It is not a process that takes place in perfect stillness. It is a process full of movement. Gas swirls, dust collides, matter accumulates. Gravity pulls small particles toward one another, and somewhere within that disk of matter, a world may be beginning to form. What is interesting is that we do not always need to see the planet directly to suspect that it exists. A forming planet may affect its surrounding environment. Its gravity may alter the movement of gas and dust. It may contribute to the formation of gaps in the disk of matter. It may be connected to the formation of dust rings, spiral structures, or regions of complex motion. And so, before seeing a world, scientists sometimes see the traces that the world leaves behind. There is something very beautiful about this idea. A planet may not yet appear clearly before our eyes, but the environment around it has already begun to change, like a wind that cannot be seen. Yet we know it exists because the leaves are trembling. Like someone who has just passed through a room and we do not see them, but the curtain is still moving. The universe is the same. There are objects that have not yet appeared directly, but their existence is written into the movements around them. And that disk of gas and dust becomes a kind of memory of the formation process. It preserves traces, gaps, rings, spirals, regions of turbulence. Astronomers observe them and ask, what created this shape? Is a planet forming here? Or is there another physical mechanism? Science does not rush to turn every trace into a conclusion. A gap in a disk does not necessarily always mean that there is a planet. Other physical processes can also create complex structures. Therefore, scientists must combine observation with models, data, and many different methods. But the ability to read these traces opens a special door. We are not only searching for planets that have already matured, we can also try to observe worlds in the process of becoming themselves. Perhaps that is one of the strangest moments when looking at the universe. A completed planet is a world, but a planet still forming is a story. It gives us the opportunity to see the process rather than only the result. And that process is often far more complex than our imagination once believed. A world does not necessarily appear all at once. It is created through countless small movements. One grain of dust collides with another. A piece of matter is held by gravity. A small structure gradually becomes a larger one, and across immense spans of time, a planet may emerge. Perhaps that is why the image of a world forming within dust carries such a powerful resonance with the way Carl Gustav Jung thought about human beings. Jung was deeply interested in processes taking place beneath the surface of consciousness. Human beings do not always immediately realize who they are becoming. An important change in inner life rarely appears as a complete flash of lightning. Sometimes, it begins with very small signs, a recurring dream, a question that keeps returning, a feeling that one's current life no longer completely fits. Something that once mattered suddenly becomes distant, an impulse that cannot yet be named. We do not yet see the new person we may become, but sometimes, the inner environment has already begun to change. Jung once wrote, "Who looks outside, dreams. Who looks inside, awakes." Looking inward is not about finding a ready-made answer. It is like observing a disk of matter in motion. We may not immediately understand every structure. We may only see the earliest signs. But if we observe patiently, we begin to recognize that movements that seem chaotic may belong to a deeper process. Human life can be the same. Not all chaos is meaningless. Not every period of losing direction is a failure. Sometimes, old things must change so that a new structure can emerge. The disk of dust around a young star is not an empty place. It is an environment full of possibility. It contains unstable matter, incomplete movements, and structures that are still changing. If we look at it with the expectation of immediately finding a perfect planet, we may see only chaos. But if we understand it as a place where something is forming, that chaos takes on a different meaning. Perhaps human life also has its own disks of dust, periods when everything seems unclear. We do not know where we are going. We do not know what is ending. We do not know what is beginning. But deep within, invisible forces are still at work. Experiences accumulate. Memories connect. New understandings gradually change the way we see the world. A part of ourselves may be forming, even though we cannot yet give it a name. Jung once wrote, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." This idea can be placed beside the image of a planet being born in dust. Becoming is not a single moment. It is a process. No one wakes up one morning and suddenly understands their entire self. Just as a planet does not appear fully formed from empty space, there is accumulation, there is movement. There are collisions, there are changes. And sometimes, there are periods of chaos. Another special aspect of young planets is that they may still retain heat from the process of their formation. As matter continues to accumulate and physical processes remain intense, young worlds may be hotter and emit radiation that astronomical instruments can observe, especially in the infrared. A young planet, in a sense, may be easier to see because it still carries traces of its birth. It is still hot, still full of energy, still changing, but time continues to pass. The planet gradually loses heat, gradually cools, and may become more difficult to observe. This creates a very interesting shift in the story of hidden worlds. We often think that the more mature an object becomes, the easier it is to understand. But in astronomy, sometimes the opposite may happen. A young planet may be brighter in infrared because of the remaining heat from its formation. As it ages and gradually cools, it may become more difficult to observe directly. That makes us think of a beautiful paradox. Sometimes, what is still becoming leaves more traces than what has already been completed. A mature planet may be quieter, but a planet still forming leaves signs everywhere. Dust rings, gaps, altered structures. It is not yet complete. But precisely because it is incomplete, its story is still being written into the environment around it. Jung once wrote, "In all chaos, there is a cosmos. In all disorder, a secret order." This is a particularly fitting thought when we look at disks of matter around young stars. To an untrained eye, they may appear to be nothing more than complex clouds of gas and dust. But to scientists, within that complexity there may exist laws, interactions, and processes gradually creating order. Of course, we should not romanticize every form of chaos, as though anything chaotic is guaranteed to lead to a positive outcome. In nature, many processes can end in entirely different ways. But what Jung suggests here is humility before what we do not yet fully understand. Just because we have not yet seen order does not mean that order certainly does not exist. Just because we have not yet seen a planet does not mean that no planet is there. And just because a process is not yet complete does not mean that it has no meaning. This is precisely what makes worlds forming in dust feel so close to the inner journey of human beings. They remind us that sometimes we cannot judge a process while it is still happening. A chapter of life may look like chaos, but only after time has passed do we realize that the things that once seemed disconnected gradually came together. A difficult experience, an encounter, a loss, a question, a change in perspective. They may become small particles of matter in a larger process. And then, one day, when looking back, we may see that what we thought was chaos had left traces of a profound transformation. Just as astronomers look at gaps in a disk of dust and ask what created them, sometimes we too can look at the gaps in our lives. Something that has disappeared, a period that has ended, a person who is no longer there, a dream that has changed. And instead of asking only, "Why is there a gap?" perhaps sometimes we can gently ask, "Could this gap be telling me something about a change that is taking place?" Not every gap is evidence of a new beginning, but sometimes change begins when an old structure is no longer intact. And that is also what the universe is doing in the dusty regions around young stars. Not everything is clear, not every planet can be seen, but the traces are gradually appearing. Scientists look at infrared light, the movement of gas, and the shapes of dust, trying to read the story written within them. A story without words, without characters, without a narrator, only light, gravity, time, and matter. Yet from these elements, a world may be born. As night falls and you prepare to drift into sleep, try to imagine distant regions around young stars. Vast clouds of dust slowly turning in the darkness. Tiny particles of matter colliding across millions of years. Faint rings of light appearing. Gaps opening. And somewhere, within those layers of dust, a planet is gradually taking shape. We may not yet see it, but the place that gave birth to it has already begun to tell its story. Perhaps that is the most beautiful thing about worlds forming in dust. Sometimes, before something appears clearly in our lives, its traces have already been quietly present for a very long time. We only need to be patient enough to observe, calm enough not to fear what is incomplete, and humble enough to understand that not everything valuable needs to appear immediately before our eyes. Somewhere in the universe, new worlds are still being created, in gas, in dust, in darkness, and in the profound silence of space. nameless planets, are still, little by little, learning how to become a world. The future, when invisible worlds begin to reveal themselves. Perhaps the most remarkable thing in the history of exploring the universe does not lie in what humanity has already seen, but in the moment when we realize that our ability to see can always change. A region of sky that appears empty today may tomorrow become the home of a newly discovered planet. A signal once dismissed as noise may, years later, be recognized as the trace of a world never known before. Old data that once seemed to have said everything it could suddenly becomes new when placed under the light of a different method of analysis. And so, the future of astronomy is not only the story of building larger telescopes, it is also the story of learning how to see differently. Throughout history, every major step forward by humanity has often begun with an expansion of our ability to observe. When Galileo turned his telescope toward the sky, what he saw changed the way humanity imagined its place in the universe. Objects that had seemed to be only points of light became more complex. New worlds appeared. Old ideas had to change. Today, we continue that journey. But this time, our eyes are not simply being replaced by more powerful telescopes. They are being expanded by infrared light, sophisticated optical systems, satellites capable of measuring motion with extraordinary precision, and algorithms able to search for patterns in enormous stores of data that no single human being could observe completely. Infrared telescopes are one of the important doors leading into regions of the universe that were once extremely difficult to access. The light visible to the human eye is only a small part of the electromagnetic spectrum. A cold world, an object hidden by dust, or a planet still retaining heat from its formation, may reveal clearer signs at wavelengths that the human eye cannot perceive at all. This means that some worlds are not truly invisible. They are simply invisible to a particular way of seeing. And this is a very profound idea. Perhaps the universe has never been as silent as we once thought. Perhaps it has been sending us signals all along. We simply have not yet had the right tools to listen. Devices such as coronagraphs have been developed to solve one of the greatest difficulties in observing planets: the overwhelming brightness of their host stars. A planet orbiting close to its star can be like a tiny point of light standing beside an enormous lamp. The light of the star is so powerful that it completely hides its smaller companion. A coronagraph helps block some of the direct light from the star, creating more favorable conditions for observing faint objects around it. An idea that seems simple, sometimes. To see something small, we do not need to make it brighter. We only need to make what is too bright less dazzling. Adaptive optics, meanwhile, helps ground-based telescopes deal with another obstacle: Earth's own atmosphere. When light from distant stars passes through layers of moving air, their images become distorted. The stars that twinkle beautifully to the naked eye are also a reminder that the atmosphere is constantly changing the light before it reaches us. Adaptive optics attempts to measure and correct those distortions. In a very visual sense, humanity is trying to make its eyes shake less before looking deeper into the darkness. Then there is Gaia, a mission that does not search for new objects only through direct observation, but also measures the positions and movements of countless stars with remarkable precision. When a planet orbits a star, its gravity can cause the star to wobble slightly. That change may become a sign that an invisible companion exists. Once again, we encounter a familiar theme in the search for hidden planets. Not seeing something directly does not mean that it cannot be known. We can see traces, see movement, see anomalies, and from those small details, build a larger picture. In the future, the Nancy Grace Roman Space Telescope is expected to significantly expand our ability to study the universe, including the investigation of exoplanets through methods suited to worlds that are difficult to detect. In particular, large-scale surveys and gravitational microlensing techniques may help scientists better understand planets far from their stars, cold worlds, and populations of planets that traditional methods have difficulty reaching. Meanwhile, ideas such as the star shade create an image that almost feels like science fiction. Imagine a device placed in space at a great distance in front of a telescope, designed to block the light of a star. When the overwhelming glare is removed, faint planets near the star may become easier to observe. Humanity does not change the planet, does not change the star, does not make the universe simpler. We are simply finding ways to arrange our point of view, and perhaps that is the essence of many revolutions in knowledge. Reality may have been there all along. What changes is our ability to recognize it. But perhaps the most astonishing thing about the future of astronomy does not lie entirely in instruments that have not yet been built. It may lie in data that already exists. Think about that. In astronomical archives around the world, there are countless images, measurements, light curves, and signals collected over many years. One scientist may have observed them while asking one question. A later generation may return to the same data, carrying a different question. And suddenly, something new appears, not because the universe has just changed, but because we have just learned how to ask the right question. Perhaps some planet left a trace in data many years ago. A small dip in brightness, an almost unnoticeable fluctuation, an unusual movement, a signal mixed among millions of others. At that time, we did not recognize it, not because scientists lacked ability, but because all knowledge is limited by the tools and questions of the era in which it exists. A new algorithm may discover a pattern that humans once overlooked. A better statistical method may distinguish a signal from noise, and a modern data processing system may be able to connect observations that once seemed unrelated. And then, one day, perhaps we will look at an old dataset and say, "It had been here from the beginning." There is something beautifully strange about that sentence. A planet does not need to wait for humans to discover it in order to exist. It does not appear at the moment its name is announced. It was already there. Perhaps it had been orbiting its star for millions or billions of years. Only our awareness arrived late. From the perspective of Carl Gustav Jung, this idea can become a profound metaphor for the human mind itself. Jung devoted much of his life to exploring what lies beyond the direct light of consciousness. Symbols, dreams, recurring patterns, and contents that people may carry within themselves without yet recognizing. Something that has not become conscious does not necessarily mean that it does not exist in our inner life. Sometimes, it has been leaving traces for a long time, in a dream, in a recurring emotion, in a familiar reaction, in a fear whose origin we do not know, in a question that keeps returning whenever life becomes quiet. Human beings sometimes resemble astronomers, standing before an enormous archive of data about themselves. We have lived through countless experiences. We have seen thousands of images. We have met countless people. We have forgotten many things. We have retained many things without even knowing it. But the meaning of an experience does not always appear on the day it happens. Some memories take many years to be understood. There are stories that only when we look back do we realize how deeply they changed us. There are signs in life that were once considered meaningless, but later became important pieces of the puzzle. And this makes the future of exploring the universe feel closely connected to the journey of discovering ourselves. Perhaps what matters is not simply seeing more, but also learning how to recognize, not merely collecting more data, but understanding data in a deeper way. Not only searching for new things, but sometimes returning to what already exists and looking at it with new eyes. Perhaps one day, an algorithm will detect the sign of a planet that humans overlooked in old data. A scientific paper will be written. A new name will be given. A faint point of light will officially enter humanity's map of the universe. And that moment may make us smile at a simple truth. That world was never truly missing. We simply did not yet know how to see it. When we think about this before going to sleep, perhaps we do not need to feel sad because we do not know everything. On the contrary, we may feel a strange sense of peace. Because not seeing something does not mean there is nothing left to discover. The universe is still vast. The data is still being analyzed. New telescopes are still being built. New algorithms are still being developed. And somewhere in the darkness, unnamed planets continue to exist. They do not know that humans are searching for them. They simply continue to move, quietly, patiently. According to their own rhythm, perhaps one of them has already appeared in our data. Perhaps its signal passed through a detector long ago. Perhaps its image has been sitting in an archive, waiting for someone to know what to look for. And one day, we will realize, not because the universe has suddenly revealed a new secret, but because we have finally become more mature in the way we ask questions. And perhaps that is the most beautiful thought with which to end this journey through hidden planets. The sky does not contain only what we already know. It also contains what we are not yet capable of recognizing. In the future, invisible worlds may gradually reveal themselves. Not all at once. Not in a single night. But little by little. A signal, a trace, an anomaly, a new method, a correct question, and then suddenly, a world steps out of the darkness. And perhaps then, we will understand that the greatest boundary of exploration does not always lie in the distance between us and the universe. Sometimes, it lies in the distance between what is already present and what we have learned how to see. So, as you close this day and prepare to drift into sleep, remember that above the night sky, invisible worlds are still there. Perhaps they are very far away. Perhaps they are too cold, too dark, too small, or perhaps they simply exist within data that we do not yet know how to read. But the future is still coming, and with it, humanity's eyes will continue to look deeper into the darkness, not to completely erase every mystery, because perhaps the universe will always contain things we do not know, but so that each time a new world appears, we are reminded that what is unseen today may become obvious tomorrow. And so, our journey through hidden planets is gradually coming to an end. But perhaps the most beautiful thing this journey leaves behind is not a list of worlds that have been discovered, nor a final answer about how many planets exist in the darkness of the universe. Perhaps the most beautiful thing is a simpler realization. The universe is always greater than what we are able to see. Throughout this journey, we have passed through worlds that do not orbit any Sunday rogue planets, drifting silently between the stars, carrying the possibility of hidden oceans beneath layers of frozen ice. We have looked at planets that do not shine, yet can still be discovered through the subtle effects they create. We have learned to search for a world not by looking directly at it, but by observing what happens around it. A star trembles, an orbit changes, a ray of light bends, a signal appears and then disappears. Sometimes, the universe does not tell us, "Here is a planet." It simply leaves behind a trace, and then waits to see whether human beings are patient enough to notice it. We have also traveled through the distant regions of planetary systems, where a single orbit can last hundreds or even thousands of years. In those places, time moves according to a rhythm completely different from the span of a human life. One generation may begin the observation, another generation may continue it, and many years later, someone may look at data collected long before and discover something that those who came before could not yet see. There is a profound beauty in this. Human beings do not explore the universe alone. We explore it through time, across generations, through questions passed from one person to another. Some scientists begin work knowing that they may never live to see the final result. Yet they continue to observe. They continue to record. They continue to ask questions. Because knowledge does not always belong to a single lifetime. It is like a lamp passed through the darkness. Each person holds it for only a short time, then hands it to someone else, and the light continues to travel farther. Perhaps the story of hidden planets also gives us a profound thought about our own lives. Carl Gustav Jung, spent many years exploring the regions that human beings cannot easily see within their own souls. We often believe that we understand ourselves clearly. We know what we like, what we fear, what we want, and what we believe. But sometimes, an event occurs, and we react in a way that even surprises us. A dream appears again and again. An old memory suddenly returns. A fear we thought had disappeared emerges once more. A familiar pattern repeats itself across different relationships. And then we begin to wonder, is there something within me that I have not truly seen? Jung once wrote, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." Perhaps this is one of the thoughts most closely connected to the entire journey we have just taken, because in astronomy, a planet may remain unseen, while still creating an influence. In psychological life, there may be inner forces that we do not fully recognize, yet they can still influence our thoughts, emotions, and choices. Of course, a planet and the human mind are two completely different worlds. One follows physical laws that can be measured. The other is the complex realm of memory, symbols, and experience. But both remind us of an important limitation. Not seeing something does not mean it does not exist. Sometimes, the most important thing is not to immediately find an answer, but to learn to recognize that there is still a question, a gap in understanding, an anomaly, a small trace, something that has not yet been explained. And from there, we begin to look more deeply. Perhaps that is also why hidden planets create such a strange feeling when we think about them at night. In the darkness, our eyes see less, but our imagination begins to expand. When the city grows quiet, when the lights in the room become softer, and the sky above sinks into darkness, it becomes easy to think about the worlds that may exist out there. A planet may be drifting alone among the stars. Another world may be orbiting a star so distant that we cannot detect its light. A young planet may be forming within clouds of gas and dust. An invisible object may be leaving traces in data that humans have not yet learned how to decode. And perhaps, even within our own solar system, there are still secrets that have not been fully discovered. That does not make the universe frightening. On the contrary, it makes the universe feel alive. Because if we already knew everything, the sky would perhaps become a book we had already finished reading. But we do not know everything, and perhaps we never will. Every answer opens another question. Every world that is discovered makes us wonder how many more worlds remain unknown. Every new technology expands the limits of what we are able to observe. And sometimes, what we need is not a universe with fewer mysteries, but deeper eyes with which to look into those mysteries. Perhaps a planet has already appeared in human data long ago. Perhaps its light once touched a sensor. Perhaps its trace has been sitting inside a vast archive, but we did not recognize it. Then one day, a new algorithm appears. A new method is developed. A scientist asks a different question, and what was once overlooked suddenly becomes clear. That planet has not just appeared. We have simply just recognized it. Perhaps life has moments like that too. There are things that have always been present within us, but only at a certain moment do we finally understand them. A love, a pain, a possibility, a dream, a path. They have been there for a long time. We simply did not yet know how to see them. And sometimes, maturity is not about becoming a completely different person. Perhaps it is simply the moment when we finally recognize what has always existed within us. Jung once wrote, "Who looks outside dreams. Who looks inside awakes." Perhaps tonight, as we look out toward the sky and also turn back toward the inner world within ourselves, these two journeys can meet at one point. Outside is the universe. Inside is the mind. Both are greater than we imagine. Both contain regions that remain unexplored, and both require time. So, if today you still have a question without an answer, perhaps you do not need to carry it as a burden. Not every mystery needs to be solved immediately. Not every path needs to be visible from the beginning. Not every answer appears in a single night. Even the universe has planets that require thousands of years to complete a single orbit. Even the light from distant stars needs time to reach us. So perhaps we, too, can give ourselves a little more time. Time to understand, time to change, time to recognize, time to become. And now, as our journey through hidden planets comes to an end, let those images slowly drift through your mind. Imagine the lonely worlds wandering between the stars, the planets hidden behind the dazzling light of their stars, the oceans that may lie deep beneath layers of ice, the young worlds forming among slowly turning rings of dust, and the planets we may never have seen, but that may one day appear on humanity's map. Perhaps somewhere in the darkness above us, an unnamed world is still continuing its journey. No one knows, no one sees it, but it still exists, quietly, patiently, following the rhythm of the universe. And perhaps one day, human curiosity will find it. But tonight, we do not need to search any further. Tonight, let the questions rest. Let the mind slow down. Let the mysteries of the universe remain with the universe. You do not need to understand everything in order to feel at peace. You do not need to see the entire path in order to keep moving forward. Sometimes, simply knowing that there are still wonders waiting to be discovered is enough. If you enjoy these gentle journeys through the mysteries of the universe, the depths of the human mind, and the questions that make us see the world in a different way, please subscribe to the channel and join us for the stories that come next. Each night, we will once again begin a new journey together, a new mystery, a new question, and perhaps a new perspective on the vast universe that surrounds us. Thank you for taking the time to listen until this very moment. Now, relax your body. Let go of the thoughts that remain unfinished. Allow your breathing to slow. Let the darkness become gentle. And remember that while you are slowly drifting into sleep, billions of worlds out there are still continuing their journeys through the silence of the universe. Wishing you a truly peaceful night, wishing you beautiful dreams, and perhaps, in your dreams, you will fly across a distant sky, where an unnamed planet is still quietly waiting to be discovered by humanity. Good night. And I will see you again on our next journey.